Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Antonia Barra. Antonia Barra was born on December 3, 1999, in Tamoco, Chile, to a wealthy family. She was the youngest of 5 children, with 2 older brothers, Sebastian and Ignasio, and 2 sisters, Catalina and Carla. Antonia was particularly close to Catalina, whom she considered her best friend and confidant. Her parents valued education and encouraged their children to pursue their interests, including sports and music. As the youngest child, Antonia was especially loved and spoiled by her parents. Despite this, she was a diligent student and dreamed of studying tourism and traveling the world. At the age of 15, Antonia met Martin Pradines on social media in 2015. Martin was 8 years older than Antonia and lived in the same city. He was divorced and had a child from a previous marriage. Little is known about Martin's early life, except that he was born in February 1992 in Tamoco to Ivan Pronis and Paula Dare. When Martin was 20, he got a girl from his school pregnant, and to avoid scandal and punishment, he married her. However, the marriage ended shortly after the birth of their child. Martin and Antonia were acquaintances who knew each other from socializing with young people on social networks between 2015 and 2017. However, their relationship remained purely platonic. After Antonia graduated from high school and enrolled in university, she relocated to a different city, and they lost touch. At university, Antonia focused on her studies in the travel industry, formed new friendships, and explored new hobbies. Martin was no longer on her mind. During her breaks from university, Antonia would return to her hometown but primarily stayed in touch with her family, including her parents and siblings. During her time at university, Antonia developed a close bond with a fellow student named Consuela Herb, and they became nearly inseparable. She also started a romantic relationship with a student named Rodrigo Aguad, which lasted for approximately a year. However, they got into a dispute at the beginning of the new semester in September 2019 and decided to take a break from each other. Antonio had recently gone through a breakup and was feeling down. Luckily, the Chilean national holiday was just around the corner, offering a long weekend and a chance to take her mind off things. She and her best friend decided to attend an electronic music festival in the charming town of Pucón. They carpooled with 3 classmates, using Consuela's car. As it happened, close friends of Antonio's family owned a summer house in Pucón, and since the owners were out of town, they kindly offered Antonio and her friend the use of their house, even providing them with the spare key. Upon arrival, the group split up, and they friends settled into the spacious and cozy house, looking forward to a relaxing weekend getaway. On the evening of September 18th, Antonia ran into Martin while walking around the city, and they struck up a conversation. As it turned out, Martin was also in town for the festival with his friends and was staying in a large rented house just outside the city center. They hit it off and made plans to meet up the next day at a party at a popular nightclub. Antonia called her parents to fill them in on her plans, and her father warned her to be careful and not to drink too much. Antonia laughed it off and promised to be responsible. The next day, Antonia and her friends spent hours getting ready for the party, choosing outfits and doing their makeup. Before heading out, they shared a bottle of wine and then took a taxi to the club. When they arrived, they ordered a bottle of champagne at the bar and drank it together before hitting the dance floor. It was after midnight when Martin and his friends arrived at the club. Antonia was already quite drunk by then, but she continued to drink and dance with Martin. According to her friend, Consuela, Antonia was advised to slow down, but she didn't listen. At one point, Consuela lost track of Antonia and spent half an hour searching for her. When she finally found her, Antonia was in another room with Martin, barely able to stand due to her intoxication. Consuela saw her classmate Benjamin Morales at the club and asked for his help in getting her friend Antonia home. However, Antonia refused to leave, saying the night was still young. A short while later, she started to feel unwell, and her friends took her outside for some fresh air. After she felt a bit better, she returned to the club. Consuela went to Antonia later that night and told her that she was exhausted and ready to head home. However, Antonia declined, wanting to stay and continue having fun. Consuela then left the club, giving up on convincing Antonia to leave with her. She took a taxi home and went straight to bed. Benjamin saw Martín escorting Antonia out of the club, holding her because she was swaying from side to side. According to Benjamin, Antonia was too drunk to fight back, and Martín took advantage of her state. They waited near the entrance for a while, allowing Antonia to recover a bit. Soon, Martín's friends arrived and suggested they continue partying at their rented house. The company ordered a taxi, but Martín and Antonia decided to walk, as she was unwell and disoriented. Surveillance cameras captured their walk, showing the man supporting a drunk student who was trying to break free from his grasp. Along the way, they stopped at a 24-hour supermarket, where Martín purchased beer. Inside the empty store, Martín attempted to kiss she, but she pushed him away and turned her back on him. It was clear she was uncomfortable, but her intoxication left her unable to resist or escape. Martín, being stronger, continued to lead Antonia, and they eventually arrived at the rented house around 8 a.m. The people in the living room saw that she was upset, but she was too drunk to clearly communicate her distress. Despite Antonia's obvious unease, Martín continued to hug and try to kiss her. The other friends, also heavily intoxicated, failed to intervene. Eventually, they retreated to a bedroom, where the man assaulted she while she was in a dazed state. Antonia was confused and disoriented as Martín ignored her attempts to resist and stop him. After the incident, he rejoined his friends in the living room and continued the party, leaving Antonia alone in the bedroom. Later, around 9 a.m., she managed to call Benjamin, but her speech was slurred and she was crying uncontrollably, making it hard for him to understand her. She was unable to explain what had happened or where she was. Benjamin became concerned and called Consuela, telling her that Antonia was in trouble and needed help. Antonia then called Consuela herself, struggling to communicate, and eventually found out her location, prompting Consuela to go to her aid. When Consuela met Martín at the doorstep, she asked him what had happened, but he just smiled and claimed that everything was consensual. However, when Consuela found her friend, Antonia, in one of the rooms, she was shocked by her condition. Antonia was crying and begged to be taken away from the place as soon as possible. They left shortly after and went home, where Antonia immediately took a shower. Despite her friend's advice to preserve the evidence and report the incident to the police, Antonia insisted that no one should ever find out what had happened. She tried to act normally when she spoke to her parents later that day, hiding her true emotions. The next morning, Antonia and her friends returned to the student dormitory. In the aftermath, Antonia struggled to cope with the trauma. She tried to forget the nightmare and resume her normal life, attending classes and socializing with friends. However, only Consuela noticed that Antonia was not okay. As time passed, Antonia's mental state deteriorated, and she gradually fell into a deep depression. Antonia was traumatized and didn't want to talk to anyone about what had happened to her. She refused to file a police report, fearing that it would only spread the news and make things worse. However, rumors about her began to circulate quickly. They would whisper, point, and laugh at her. One of her classmates even had the audacity to ask her about the rumors in front of everyone. However, what sent Antonia over the edge was a phone call from Rodrigo, her ex-boyfriend, with whom she still had strong feelings and had been holding on to the hope of rekindling their relationship. During the call, Rodrigo repeated all the rumors he had heard and told Antonia that he never wanted to see her again. Antonia broke down in tears, trying to defend herself and explain that the rumors were not true. But Rodrigo was unforgiving, using derogatory language to describe her and calling her promiscuous before hanging up. This conversation was devastating for Antonia, and she couldn't cope with the emotional pain. On Saturday, October 12, 2019, Antonia went to her parents' house, seeking comfort and solace with her family. Concern for Antonia's well-being grew as her relatives noticed a deep sadness in her eyes, despite her claims that everything was okay. Later that evening, she posted old childhood photos on social media, accompanied by a distressing message. The following day, after dinner with her family, Antonia retreated to her room on the third floor. Her sister Catalina checked on her about an hour later, but Antonia asked to be left alone, saying she wanted to sleep. Catalina granted her wish, turned off the light, and bid her a loving goodbye before leaving the room. 2 hours passed before their mother, Marcela, came to Antonia's room to announce that dinner was ready. After knocking on the door with no response, Marcela entered the room and initially thought Antonia was asleep. However, upon touching her hand, she was met with an unsettling stillness. Devastated, Marcela screamed for help, and the rest of the household rushed to the room. In a state of panic, they called for emergency services while attempting to revive Antonia on their own before medical professionals arrived. Antonia's situation had become hopeless, and she tragically took her own life by overdosing on sleeping pills. The investigation into her death and the first attempts to hold the perpetrator accountable began. The news shocked her family and friends, as many were unaware of the severe emotional distress Antonia had been experiencing. As Antonia's parents sought to understand what had happened to their daughter, they spoke with her friends and classmates. They were shocked by the rumors and gossip that had been circulating about Antonia. Consuela, in particular, shared everything she knew, but the parents felt that more needed to be done. They hired a top private detective to help reconstruct the events leading up to Antonia's death and gather evidence to bring the person responsible to justice. Alejandro, determined to seek justice for his daughter, used his connections to organize a press conference. In front of dozens of cameras, he shared the devastating truth: his daughter had been the victim of forced bullying, which she had been unable to survive. The person responsible, he emphasized, remained at large. The detective reconstructed the timeline of events from that fateful night and gathered statements from several key witnesses, including Consuela, Benjamin, and a few other university students, who were willing to testify in court. With all the evidence collected, the Antonia family petitioned the court to arrest and prosecute Martín for his actions. However, the police determined that the evidence presented was insufficient to warrant taking him into custody. Martín claimed that everything that happened was consensual, although he admitted that both parties were intoxicated. Furthermore, the victim did not report the incident to the police. As a result, Martín remained free, and he and his family subsequently filed a lawsuit against the Antonia family, accusing them of defamation, harassment, and the unauthorized disclosure of their personal information. According to the Martín family, Antonia's relatives had slandered their son and brother, Martín. In response, the Martín family decided to hold a press conference to defend themselves publicly. They argued that Martín's reputation had been harmed without justification and presented themselves as the ones who had been wronged. The Martín family also accused Antonia of sharing their personal contact information, including their home address, phone numbers, and social media handles. As a result, Martín and his family received daily insults and anonymous death threats. The Martín family maintained that Martín's guilt had not been proven and that everything had happened by mutual consent. They expressed their willingness to defend Martín's case in court. Surprisingly, after this statement, the police supported the Martín family, causing Antonia's relatives to stop making negative comments about them and to stop sharing personal data. This sudden change was a major blow. This unexpected turn of events was a significant setback. Despite this, Antonia's relatives continued to seek justice with the support of the public. Victims who were initially silent about their experiences began speaking out after Antonia's case gained widespread public attention. Within a month, 8 more girls came forward to the police, claiming they too had been harassed and assaulted by Martín. They had previously remained silent, fearing they would be condemned and censured. One of the victims was just 13 years old at the time of the assault. As more girls who suffered at the hands of Martín began contacting the police, he was eventually taken into custody. Martín was arrested in June 2020 and held at Tamoco City Prison on suspicion of committing assaults between 2011 and 2019. However, Martín was released on his own recognizance less than a month after his lawyer intervened, and was allowed to remain free for the duration of the investigation. Furthermore, several lawsuits filed by the injured girls were rejected due to the statute of limitations having expired. There was a high likelihood that many cases would be disregarded. Out of 8 appeals, only 2 were registered by the court. The release of Martín from custody and the rejection of the victims' claims sparked widespread outrage. Protests and rallies erupted nationwide, with thousands demanding justice. In response, the prosecutor's office re-examined the case and pushed for a change in Martín's bail conditions, seeking to return him to custody. Meanwhile, the statute of limitations was lifted for all cases of violence committed by Martín. During his trial in February 2021, his social media messages were revealed, in which he boasted about his actions to friends. It was also discovered that Martín kept a collection of his victims' underwear at home, taken as trophies. This collection included items from victims who had previously reported him to the court, as well as a belonging of Antonia's. On August 26, 2021, Martín was charged with 9 counts of crimes involving sexual misconduct. 3 of the victims were minors when the incidents occurred. The Antonia family appealed to the public to speak out against violence and bring those responsible to justice. The trial began in June 2022, allowing Martín's lawyers sufficient time to prepare. They presented witness statements and surveillance footage showing that Antonia left with the defendant voluntarily and did not attempt to resist him. The defense challenged the testimonies of other victims, but in August 2022, the court delivered a guilty verdict against Martín. He was convicted of 8 crimes involving sexual misconduct and causing Antonia's nervous breakdown, which ultimately led to her death. Martín was sentenced to 20 years in prison. However, his lawyers, led by Pinus, promptly filed an appeal. On December 29, the Supreme Court ordered a new trial. In March 2023, Martín's case was assigned to the Public Defender's Office. During the new trial, Martín maintained his innocence, attributing the events leading to Antonia's death to the large quantity of alcohol they had consumed together. Despite this, on July 7, 2023, Martín was found guilty again. The court reduced his initial 20-year sentence to 17 years, considering the 3 years he had already spent in prison. He had only 14 years left to serve. However, Antonia's family expressed dissatisfaction with this decision in an official press release made by her father. They noted that no punishment could bring back their daughter. During the ongoing lawsuits, Antonia's family and other victims affected by Martín's actions joined forces with public figures to advocate for women's rights. Together, they worked to amend the criminal code, specifically the sections related to sexual offenses. Their objective was to protect the rights of victims of harassment and sexual violence. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Tina Watson. Tina Watson was born in West Germany on February 13, 1977. She was adopted by Tommy and Cindy Thomas on January 24, 1980. Tina met her future husband, Gabe Watson, while attending the University of Alabama in Birmingham, and they started dating in January 2001. Tina was diagnosed with a heart condition called paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia, PSVT. Despite this, she took diving lessons in January 2003 and earned her certification before marrying Gabe on October 11, 2003. At the time of their wedding, Gabe was a qualified rescue diver with 55 dives under his belt, while Tina had only dived 5 times. As Tina and Gabe's wedding day approached, Tina's anxiety grew. At 26 years old, she had already experienced 2 failed relationships and was now attempting marriage for the second time. Her first relationship with Scott McCulloch ended due to her mother's disapproval. Although her mother didn't have specific reasons, she wanted a better life for Tina and felt she was rushing into marriage. Tina and Scott eventually parted ways. Her second relationship with Stan Marks also failed, but this time, her parents weren't involved. They simply couldn't overcome their differences and mutually decided to end the relationship. It wasn't until Christmas Eve, at a party with friends, that Tina met Gabe Watson. Their relationship wasn't sparked by love at first sight but rather by mutual support after recent breakups. 2 years into their relationship, Gabe proposed to Tina. Having learned from past experiences, Tina agreed, but only if she had her parents' blessing. In 2003, Gabe decided to ask Tina's parents for their blessing in a romantic gesture, choosing Valentine's Day. However, since Tina's father was away, the dinner was rescheduled for February 15th. During the dinner, Gabe announced his decision to spend the rest of his life with Tina. Tina's father, Tommy, responded with a straightforward question, "Do you love Tina?" However, instead of answering, Watson stuttered and remained silent. His father dismissed this reaction as mere awkwardness. Tommy then posed the same question to Tina, but she also avoided a direct answer. Instead, she expressed her fear of being alone at 26 years old. After considering their responses, Tommy gave his blessing to the young couple. The wedding preparations were well underway, with Tina preoccupied with her attire, guest list, and other details. Meanwhile, Watson was solely focused on planning their honeymoon. He had already decided on a trip to the Great Barrier Reef in the Pacific Ocean near Australia, where he intended to go diving. There isn't any consulting Tina about her preferences. To explore the sunken ship, Townsville Titanic, which sank in 1911, Gabe wanted Tina to learn scuba diving. However, Tina wasn't interested in diving, unlike Gabe, who was an experienced scuba diver with 55 dives under his belt. He had even completed a rescue diving course. Gabe would occasionally take Tina scuba diving in a pool with calm water and lifeguard supervision, but that was the extent of her experience. Gabe gave Tina an ultimatum: if she didn't learn to dive by their honeymoon, she would have to stay home while he went on his adventures. Gabe took out a loan to buy Tina her own diving equipment and pay for her lessons. However, Tina's first instructor was unimpressed with her skills and warned Gabe that she wasn't suited for open ocean diving. Gabe was furious and refused to listen, accusing the instructor of being a poor teacher and discontinuing the classes. The second instructor promptly gave Tina a passing grade, but also made a comment that she only made an effort to impress her future husband. Tina and Gabe got married on October 11th, and 2 days later, they embarked on a trip to Australia, which was funded by their wedding gifts totaling $10,000. During their honeymoon, Gabe dedicated some time to making Tina happy. They explored Sydney, visited the Sydney Aquarium, and went to the zoo. Although Tina was initially excited, her mood changed as they approached their visit to the Great Barrier Reef. On October 21st, they traveled to Townsville and boarded a boat in the evening, heading to a renowned destination popular among divers. However, employees at the diving company later reported that Tina and Gabe appeared inexperienced with diving equipment. Despite Gabe having completed diving courses and having some experience, he seemed uncertain about the equipment, handling it as if it were his first time. Before diving, Gabe assisted Tina in passing the required exam, which typically should be conducted individually. When the instructor offered Tina assistance underwater, she declined. The dive log noted a strong current that day, a crucial detail in the events that unfolded. As they prepared for the dive, Gabe helped Tina with the equipment they had purchased in the US. He rented an 11-liter tank for himself but chose an 8.5-liter tank for Tina, a volume considered small and potentially hazardous given her limited experience. Initially, the dive to the Townsville Titanic wreck was not possible. Tina needed an additional air tank, which stopped her from reaching the required depth. Furthermore, Gabe's underwater computer was not working. The computer calculates the needed diving and ascent speeds and shows the oxygen levels in the cylinders. After returning to the boat and resolving the computer issue, they attempted the dive again. The wreck was located 49 feet below the surface, and Tina was the first to descend, with Gabe following closely behind. According to Gabe's account, everything seemed normal at first. However, at some point, Tina stopped, began waving at him, and then signaled that she wanted to ascend. Gabe immediately recognized that she was panicking, which was not an uncommon occurrence for her. As they were already halfway to the surface, Gabe decided to calm Tina down and maintain their current depth for a while, rather than continuing the dive, allowing her to psychologically adjust to the pressure. Gabe said that Tina had been breathing deeply, which had not been safe, and Gabe had seen that Tina was starting to sink. Gabe had attempted to grab her belt to keep her afloat, but Tina had swung her arm forcefully, knocking his mask off. As Gabe had quickly put his mask back on, Tina had drifted further away. Gabe had tried swimming towards her but had been unable to reach her. Gabe had then made the decision to return to the surface to seek help from the lifeguards. During his ascent, Gabe had met two other swimmers, but despite his attempts to signal for help, the swimmer had ignored him. It's worth noting that there were two Asian men in the vicinity, but neither corroborated Gabe's account of seeking help. Subsequent police analysis of underwater computer readings revealed that Gabe had indeed attempted to swim after his wife for a short while before giving up. However, his ascent to the surface was controlled, as he stopped at each designated depth level as instructed. Other divers at the scene claimed that Gabe had sufficient opportunity to rescue his wife, but failed to act. The incident occurred early in the dive, and Gabe had enough oxygen to swim to the bottom and back to the surface. Rescuers on the ship responded quickly, locating Tina's body at a depth of 82 feet. Despite their efforts, including 40 minutes of artificial respiration on the deck, Tina was pronounced dead. Witnesses reported that Gabe kept his distance from his wife's body, appearing indifferent to the situation, and even exhibiting carefree behavior such as smiling with other passengers on the way to shore, which he later denied in court. The autopsy results for Tina revealed some inconsistencies. Although there were no obvious signs of a violent death, there were bruises on her neck and blood in her nostrils. However, these findings are not unusual given the 82-foot depth at which her body was discovered. Toxicology tests showed no alcohol in her system, but high levels of ibuprofen and paracetamol, which are commonly used to treat seasickness. A small amount of fluid was found in her lungs. The official cause of death was listed as drowning, but it is possible that she was already oxygen deprived before succumbing to drowning. Tina's diving gear was inspected by the Australian Water Police, but no issues were found. Initially, the police could have dismissed the incident as an accident caused by an inexperienced diver neglecting safety protocols, a sadly common occurrence. However, there were some suspicious aspects to the case, such as the inconclusive autopsy results. Additionally, Watson's unusual behavior, as reported by the diving team, didn't align with the expected actions of a grieving husband. These inconsistencies made it difficult to close the case, leading to a prolonged investigation. Gabe began to suspect that the detectives were investigating him. Furthermore, Tina's parents refused to accept the incident as a tragic accident and sought to hold their son-in-law accountable either for their daughter's death or for failing to assist her. The police observed that the suspect, Gabe, was in a state of shock. He displayed erratic behavior, crying and laughing uncontrollably, and twitching nervously. Gabe requested to call his father and complained of ear pain. He also begged his father to inform his wife's parents about the tragic event. Later that night, Gabe was released from police custody. He proceeded to the yacht owned by the company that had organized the diving trip to the reef. Gabe asked the company for a place to stay for the night, citing that the trip was initially supposed to last 2 days but was cut short due to his wife's death. He also requested a partial refund for the dive, as he never got to see the sunken ship. On October 24th, Gabe's mother arrived in Townsville to support her son and help him find a lawyer. At Gabe's request, they visited the morgue, where he wanted to see his wife one last time. Although Gabe was still considered a suspect, his actions were those of a grieving husband. He cried, held his wife's hand, and begged for her forgiveness, unaware that a police officer was standing outside, recording his actions on a tape recorder. Detective Lawrence questioned Gabe in court about his earlier statement next to Tina at the morgue, "I didn't mean to hurt you." Lawrence sought clarification on what Gabe meant by it. Gabe had been traveling home with his wife's body and had a layover in Oakland. During this time, he sought medical attention for a sore ear and was held for evaluation at the airport. The investigation suggested that Gabe did this to avoid meeting Tina's father. However, it was revealed that ear problems are common among divers, which may have explained Gabe's condition. At Tina's funeral on November 5th, Gabe met with his father-in-law, Watson. In a visible gesture, Gabe removed his wife's wedding ring and placed it on his finger, covering his own ring. He also removed her earrings and handed them to Watson. After this encounter, the Thomas family did not interact with Gabe again that day. Later in the trial, Gabe was questioned about removing his wife's jewelry during her funeral. He simply smiled and shrugged, seemingly unwilling to confirm or deny it. Those who knew Gabe had mixed opinions about his character. Some found him to be kind and amusing, while others considered him cruel and controlling. However, they all agreed that Gabe and his wife, Tina, appeared unhappy together. Tina's friends corroborated what she had shared with her father at a family dinner on February 15th, that she had married Gabe out of fear of being alone and that this decision ultimately led to her demise. Furthermore, one of Tina's friends revealed that Tina had confided in her about being taken to an insurance company by Gabe, where she was forced to purchase a life insurance policy at an inflated rate, naming Gabe as the beneficiary. This account was verified by the insurance agent, who confirmed the details. The cab driver who drove Gabe and Tina to their yacht also testified that Tina had cried throughout the ride, while Gabe ignored her. Another friend of Tina's, Amanda Phillips, came forward with a disturbing story that shed more light on the true nature of Gabe and Tina's relationship. It was revealed that Gabe had secretly recorded Tina using the bathroom, edited the footage, and incorporated it into a Christmas celebration video. That would have been acceptable, but he chose to do it in front of a full house of guests during a general viewing. As everyone tried to explain to him that his actions were in poor taste, he laughed loudly while they gestured in frustration, tapping their fingers against their temples. Although removing jewelry during a funeral may seem like a shocking and condemnatory act by Gabe, a more disturbing incident occurred in 2008. During the trial, the jury was shown footage of Watson visiting Tina's grave, taking all the flowers, and carrying them away. The flowers were later found in a nearby trash can. Tina's father had noticed the missing flowers and set up a hidden camera among the monuments to catch the thief. However, he was shocked to see Gabe on the tape and was outraged by his actions. In court, Gabe claimed that he and his wife had discussed their own death on an extreme honeymoon and that she had requested no flowers on her grave. This excuse sounded strange and unlikely. Gabe claimed that Tina drowned while he attempted to put a mask on her face underwater. However, it was later revealed that this was impossible without an additional air source, which in this case was Tina's oxygen supply. In November 2008, Australian authorities arrested Gabe. His trial began on June 5, 2009, where he pleaded guilty to failing to save his wife. As a result, he was charged with negligent homicide and sentenced to 18 months in prison. Upon completing his sentence, Gabe returned to the U.S. However, a year later, he was charged with first-degree murder by a U.S. court. The prosecution alleged that his motive was to collect insurance payouts following his wife's death. Gabe's lawyer defended him by shifting the blame onto the diving company, claiming that its employees had failed to ensure tourist safety and were now afraid of losing their business due to potential license revocation. Regarding the insurance payout, Gabe received $33,000. However, he spent significantly more on lawyers and additional expert analysis. Despite this, the prosecution maintained that Gabe's expenditure was an attempt to avoid suspicion, as he could not assume he would be believed. The prosecutor also disputed the fact that Gabe, who had a degree in drowning rescue, was unable to save his wife. Gabe addressed the jury, reflecting on the past 7 years since the tragedy. He expressed that he has thought about that terrible day every day, and the public has blamed him, calling him a murderer. Gabe noted that nobody has shown him understanding or empathy, except for his late wife's parents, who he understands will never forgive him. Gabe acknowledged that he can be accused of not doing enough to save his wife, Tina, but he believes he has already been punished for that. He stated that he was afraid to die and wanted to live, which is why he didn't drown with his wife 7 years ago. Gabe emphasized that he still wants to live now. The court found no evidence of Gabe's guilt, and the jury declared him not guilty. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Crystal Rogers. Crystal Rogers, a devoted 35-year-old mother of 4 from Bardstown, Kentucky, shared custody with her ex-husband Keith despite their separation. They maintained a friendly relationship for their children's sake. Crystal lived 45 miles southeast of Louisville with her current boyfriend, Brooks Holt, and their 2-year-old son. As a responsible and reliable parent, Crystal always responded to her mother Sherry Ballard's calls. However, when Sherry couldn't reach Crystal on July 5, 2015, she grew concerned. It was unusual for Crystal to ignore her mother's calls, and Sherry's worry intensified with each passing hour. After 24 hours of silence, Sherry's maternal instincts told her something was wrong. She tried contacting Crystal multiple times, but her efforts were met with silence. Sherry then reached out to Crystal's friends and family, hoping someone could provide information about her daughter's whereabouts. Crystal's family had not seen or heard from her in a while, which was unusual. Her sister Brooke tried to reach her but couldn't, and her boyfriend Brooks said he hadn't seen her since Friday night, when she was playing games on her phone before he went to bed. When Brooks woke up the next morning, Crystal was gone, and he thought she might have gone to visit her cousin for the 4th of July. However, Crystal's mother Sherry was worried and tried to contact her, but couldn't. She reported Crystal missing to the police, and just then, her son Casey got a call from a friend who had seen Crystal's car on the side of the road. This made Casey and his father Tommy very concerned, as they knew Crystal would never leave her car behind. When they arrived at the location, they found Crystal's car with a flat tire, which only added to their fear that something was seriously wrong. If Crystal had car trouble, she would have contacted someone for help, not tried to fix it herself. The fact that her keys, phone, and purse was still in the car, on the passenger seat, was suspicious. Crystal never went anywhere without these belongings, so their presence added to the concern about her safety. After finding her car on the Bluegrass Parkway, Crystal's father and brother notified the Nelson County Sheriff's Department. Investigators searched the car, but found no signs of a struggle. However, they did notice something unusual. The driver's seat was adjusted for someone taller than Crystal. This raised suspicions that someone else might have been driving her car. The authorities asked for witnesses to come forward, but no one provided any useful information to aid the investigation. The police decided to seek the public's help through the media, releasing Crystal's photo and asking for anyone with information to come forward. Despite their efforts, no significant leads were discovered. Crystal's father, Tommy, took matters into his own hands, organizing search parties to find his daughter. However, the challenging hot and humid weather conditions hindered their searches. Many people helped search for Crystal, but one person who was noticeably absent was her boyfriend, Brooks Holt. The police grew suspicious of Brooks because he seemed unconcerned about Crystal's disappearance, especially since she was the mother of his child. When questioned, Brooks claimed that Crystal and their son had gone with him to his family's farm the night before. Brooks said they returned home around midnight, and he went to bed. He stated that Crystal stayed up late playing games on her phone, as she often did. Brooks claimed that when he woke up at 7 a.m., his son was in bed with him, but Crystal was missing. At first, he thought maybe she had gone out with her cousin. However, those close to Crystal disagreed with Brooks' story. They knew Crystal would never leave her 2-year-old son behind, as they were extremely close. In fact, Crystal's sister, Brooke, believed Crystal was planning to leave Brooks because he had been dishonest with her and showed little emotional attachment. Crystal had told her mother, Cher, that she wanted to end her relationship with Brooks, but she was afraid to do so because he was controlling. Crystal's brother, Casey, had also noticed the tension between them and had seen them arguing several times. The police asked Brooks to come in for questioning and gave him a polygraph test, but the results were inconclusive. After the test, Brooks had a formal interview with the detectives. They had gathered evidence that supported his alibi, including a video that showed his truck entering his family's farm and leaving around midnight. However, because the truck had tinted windows, they couldn't determine who was in the vehicle at the time. Brooks explained that while he was at the farm, he did some chores, set a fire to dispose of building materials, and waited for the fire to die out before driving back home. During the interview, the police asked him about a brief 13-second phone call he made to a business associate, Steve Lawson, on his way back from the farm. To clear up any confusion, Brooks asked Steve Lawson to explain their conversation to the police during the interview and called him. However, the police was skeptical when Steve Lawson claimed he had called Brooks to ask for the phone number of a rental property, as it sounded like a rehearsed alibi. According to Steve Lawson, Brooks told him he needed to wait until he got home to get the number from Crystal, who handled such matters. The police were puzzled by this, questioning why Brooks couldn't simply hand the phone to Crystal, who was with him at the time, and resolve the issue right then. They wondered why Brooks had to wait to talk to her in person. During the interview, Brooks received a call from his brother Nick, a police officer at the Bardstown Police Department, who advised Brooks to leave the interrogation room immediately. The police were skeptical that Crystal had voluntarily abandoned her car on the side of the Bluegrass Parkway. They suspected that something had happened to her while she was at the Brooks HW family farm. As the investigation into her disappearance progressed, several people came forward claiming to have seen Brooks's truck and his brother Nick's police car at the Howell family farm. Detectives became increasingly convinced that the brothers were at the farm, attempting to destroy evidence related to Crystal's disappearance. To obtain more information, the police decided to bring Nick, Brooks's brother, in for questioning. They confronted him with eyewitness accounts that placed him at his family's farm on July 8th and asked him to provide an explanation for his presence there. Nick claimed to have no idea what the police were referring to and said he wasn't out that night. But the police didn't believe him. They directly asked Nick if he and his brother had destroyed or hidden evidence related to Crystal's disappearance. Nick firmly denied any wrongdoing and swore that his brother was incapable of harming anyone. The police officer, Nick, was adamant that he would never assist in covering up a crime, including helping Brooks. After the interview, Nick agreed to take a polygraph test, but he failed 2 questions: whether he knew Crystal's current location and if he was withholding information about her disappearance. Despite failing the polygraph, Nick insisted he was telling the truth. On October 15th, the police investigation identified Crystal's boyfriend, Brooks Holt, as the prime suspect in her disappearance. The same day, Nick, Brooks' brother, was fired from the Bardstown Police Department for hindering the investigation. Although the police were confident they knew who was responsible for Crystal's disappearance and death, they lacked sufficient evidence to make an arrest. They were hesitant to take their suspect to court without solid evidence, fearing an acquittal would prevent them from retrying the case due to double jeopardy. In Kentucky, the FBI and local law enforcement joined Crystal's friends, family, and volunteers in an extensive search effort at the 240-acre Ha family farm. Despite daily searches, Crystal's loved ones were left frightened and desperate for any news. The searchers hoped to find Crystal safe and sound, but they also needed answers. At the farm, investigators thoroughly examined the remains of a fire, but they didn't find any human remains. They did discover pieces of clothing in the ashes, but they couldn't link them to Crystal's disappearance. The police issued multiple search warrants for the farm, targeting vehicles and homes. However, these searches didn't produce any significant leads or evidence related to Crystal's case. A $100,000 reward was offered for information about her disappearance, but no one came forward with any information. Tommy Ballard, Crystal's dad, was driven to find his daughter. Her disappearance hit him hard, especially since he'd already gone through a similar tragedy. In 1979, his pregnant sister was brutally murdered by her husband and his friend. They shot her, beat her, and then burned and scattered her remains on a farm. Though it took years, the perpetrators were eventually caught, convicted, and sentenced to life in prison. Despite this painful past, Tommy refused to give up on finding Crystal. He pursued every lead, no matter how small, and explored every avenue. He talked to neighbors, interviewed potential witnesses, and contacted anyone who might have information. To aid his search, Tommy spent his own savings on hiring experts, including cadaver dogs and a private investigator. Tommy Ballard was determined to solve the mystery, so he kept detailed records of every tip he followed and clue he found. He regularly met with the police to share his discoveries and get their input. On an early November morning in 2016, Tommy took his 11-year-old grandson, Crystal's son, on a hunting trip on their property. Tommy's wife, Sherry, watched as they left, feeling a sense of unease. She quickly said a prayer, asking God to watch over them in the woods. Sherry then returned to bed, trying to relax. However, just minutes later, the phone rang, shattering her peace. When she answered, she heard her panicked grandson on the other end. "Papa has been shot," he cried, his voice trembling with fear. Sherry's heart sank, and she was overcome with panic. She rushed to the bathroom, grabbing clothes as she went, while her grandson continued to cry on the phone. Sherry quickly reassured her husband, telling him she was calling 911 as she rapidly got dressed. Her mind was flooded with worries about his condition. When she arrived at the scene, she was met with an overwhelming sense of grief. She rushed to Tommy's side, shaking him vigorously, but her distress turned to horror as she saw blood gushing from his nose. When officers and witnesses arrived, they quickly pulled Sherry away from Tommy so that medical personnel could tend to him. However, Sherry knew her husband was already dead. Tommy Ballard was pronounced dead at the scene, having been shot once in the chest. Initially, the police suggested that Tommy's death was a hunting accident, which outraged Sherry. She was adamant that this was not an accident, but rather a deliberate murder. As the investigation unfolded, authorities ruled out the possibility that Tommy took his own life, finding that his weapon had not been fired. They also cleared Tommy's 11-year-old grandson of any involvement in the shooting. Eventually, the Kentucky State Police announced that they were treating Tommy's death as a murder investigation. The Ballard family believes that Tommy's murder was connected to his investigation into his daughter Crystal's disappearance. They think those responsible for harming Crystal wanted Tommy silenced, fearing he might uncover the truth. In 2022, the FBI led a 5-day investigation into Crystal Rogers' disappearance, returning to the Haar family farm to gather more evidence. Their goal was to collect enough evidence to hold the responsible individual accountable. Although the FBI didn't disclose what they found, a spokesperson confirmed in October 2022 that all evidence collected would be analyzed at the FBI's lab in Quantico as the investigation continued. The Kentucky Attorney General made a key decision, appointing a special prosecutor to help with the prosecution of criminal charges related to the deaths of Crystal Rogers and her father, Tommy Ballard. Crystal's mother, Sherry Ballard, was informed of the appointment and strongly supported it, believing it was necessary to ensure justice for her loved ones. In July 2023, a Kentucky grand jury indicted 32-year-old Joseph Lawson on 2 counts: conspiracy to commit murder and tampering with physical evidence, both related to Crystal's disappearance. 2 months later, Crystal's boyfriend, Brooks Houck, was arrested and charged with murder and tampering with physical evidence. The judge set his bond at $10 million and ordered him to avoid contact with Crystal's family. The people of Bardstown felt a mix of emotions when Brooks Houck was arrested for Crystal's murder. While the news was heartbreaking, bringing home the reality that Crystal was not just missing, but had been killed, many felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that justice would be served. The arrest brought a sense of closure and relief to those affected by Crystal's tragic death. Brooks Houck appeared in court virtually 1 month after his October 2023 arrest. This crucial hearing brought new revelations about another unsolved Bardstown murder. The judge asked prosecutor Shane Young if his team was investigating any other cases connected to Crystal's case. The prosecutor was investigating 2 connected murders: Crystal's murder and the murder of her father, Tommy Ballard. They believed they had the gun used to kill Tommy, which they claimed to have purchased from Nick Houck, who allegedly used a fake name during the sale. Brooks Houck's attorneys requested that the Nelson County judge be disqualified from the case, citing bias and unfair treatment since 2017. They also argued that the $10 million bail was excessive. However, the Kentucky Appeals Court ruled against Houck, upholding the $10 million bond and denying his request to replace the judge. In a separate development, Stephen Lawson was indicted in December 2023 on charges of conspiracy to commit murder and tampering with physical evidence. Notably, Stephen Lawson's son, Joseph Lawson, had been arrested in connection with Crystal's disappearance. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Anna Repkina. Anna Alexieva Repkina, a charming and outgoing woman from Chelyabinsk, Russia, hailed from a good family. With a strong work ethic, passion for travel, rock music, and cats, she owned several. Anna was a vibrant individual. She loved capturing life's precious moments through photography and valued romantic relationships deeply. Her ultimate goal was to find true love, settle down, have children, and build a happy family. Anna's remarkable sense of humor made her a delight to be around, something her friends and acquaintances often highlighted. However, her life took a dramatic turn in 2016, when her high school sweetheart of 7 years ended their relationship, leaving her devastated. Despite this heartbreak, Anna refused to give up on her dreams. She took the initiative to try online dating, determined to find her ideal partner. On a Russian dating site, she came across a promising match who seemed to possess all the qualities she was looking for. Anna met a charming young man named William Hargrove, a 26-year-old from Oregon who worked as a bouncer and mechanic. What drew her to him was his fascination with Russian culture, but more importantly, his adoration for her. William consistently showed kindness to Anna, often complimenting her and making an effort to be present for her whenever she needed him, despite the physical distance between them. Those who knew him described William as a charismatic and passionate person with a great sense of humor, who inspired those around him to chase their dreams. As they developed their online relationship over several months, their bond grew stronger. They seemed perfectly suited for each other, sharing similar tastes in music and a love for live performances, as well as a similar sense of humor. Friends who knew them noted that Anna and William complemented each other beautifully. William's caring nature was evident in his thoughtful gestures, such as sending Anna flowers despite being separated by oceans. Anna and William's online chemistry was undeniable, but they wanted to confirm their connection in person. So in December 2016, they decided to take their relationship to the next level. Anna booked a flight to Oregon to spend the Christmas holidays with William. However, she initially made a mistake and booked a ticket to Portland, Maine, instead of Portland, Oregon. Before realizing the error, she had already flown to Maine, but she was determined to make it work. After fixing her flight issues, Anna finally arrived in Oregon. William picked her up from the airport, and they spent the next 10 days together. He took her on sightseeing trips, and they enjoyed activities like visiting the seaside, playing in the snow, and cuddling by the fire. William also introduced her to his friends, and they celebrated New Year's Eve together, sharing a romantic kiss at midnight. It was the perfect Christmas experience for Anna. After a whirlwind 10-day visit, William popped the question to Anna using his grandmother's emerald ring, and she happily accepted. However, what Anna didn't know was that William was leading a double life. During their time together, he had also been secretly seeing his 33-year-old landlady, Michelle Chavez, behind her back. William rented a room in Michelle's house, and it seemed he also held a special place in her heart. Michelle was married with 2 children, but this didn't deter her romantic involvement with William. Their affair had been ongoing for over a year when Anna, William's girlfriend, visited Michelle's home. Unbeknownst to Anna, she was meeting her rival, as Michelle was her boyfriend's landlady. Michelle showed understanding when William brought Anna to her home, perhaps thinking William would never leave her or believing Anna was insignificant, much like her own husband. Whatever the reason, Michelle didn't expose their secret. It wasn't until Michelle discovered the engagement ring that her husband's stance on the situation became clear to everyone involved. Meanwhile, Anna returned to Russia, unaware of the drama she had left behind. After posting a photo of her engagement ring on Facebook, the social media algorithm brought the post to Michelle's attention. Michelle's anger wasn't solely due to William's engagement to another woman. Michelle planned to leave her husband to be with William and, as a symbol of her commitment, took off her wedding ring and gave it to him. However, she soon discovered that the ring was identical to the engagement ring William had given to Anna. It turned out that William had given Anna Michelle's own wedding ring, which had been recycled. Michelle confronted William about this, and he tried to calm her down, insisting that Anna meant nothing to him and promising to break off their engagement on March 1, 2017. Meanwhile, Anna had packed her bags, including her wedding dress, and had quit her job, ready to start a new life with William in another part of the world. Michelle was unhappy about this development. Anna's mother, Yelena, also had reservations about her daughter's hasty decision. She was unsure about William, whom Anna barely knew, and thought she was rushing into things. Anna, however, was convinced that she was in love and saw no reason to wait. Yelena finally released Michelle from her grasp. Michelle, realizing Anna's visit was not a social call, grew angry. She demanded that William find another place to live, refusing to let the engaged couple stay under her roof. William complied, renting an apartment for himself and Anna. However, he continued to secretly see Michelle, sneaking out to visit her and reassuring her of his commitment to her, downplaying Anna's importance. Michelle became increasingly worried about William's growing relationship with Anna, so she took action. She contacted Anna on Facebook, revealing everything about her and William's ongoing affair. Anna reported the conversation to William, but he dismissed it as Michelle's jealousy. Anna believed him, and the couple decided to ignore Michelle's warnings and focus on their future together. They set a wedding date for March 23rd and planned a beachside ceremony. Anna wore the wedding dress she had brought from Russia, and they headed to the beach. However, the officiant failed to show up. After waiting for what felt like an eternity, they returned home. They planned to try to get married again in April. On that same day, surveillance footage captured the couple buying food at a McDonald's drive-thru. Anna sat in the passenger seat, still wearing her wedding dress. William had told her that the officiant was sick, but that was a lie. Despite claiming he didn't love Anna, William had kept her convinced that he wasn't invested in their relationship. However, Michelle had grown tired of William's manipulation. On April 15th, Michelle gave William an ultimatum: choose between her and Anna. Michelle made it clear that if Anna wasn't gone by April 20th, she would take drastic action, build a snowman, a sinister phrase meaning to kill someone, and hide their body in a snowy area where it would never be found. After issuing her threat, Michelle lost contact with William and assumed he had chosen Anna over her. She left him voicemails to express her feelings. On Sunday, April 16th, William phoned Michelle to share the news that he was single again, having just ended his tumultuous relationship with Anna, who was now headed back to Russia. Coincidentally, William had hit a deer with his car and was waiting at the Ali Martile store for repairs. He asked Michelle to meet him there. As it was Easter Sunday, Michelle was attending a family gathering, but she excused herself to join William. When she arrived, they reconnected by having an intimate moment in William's car, reaffirming their strong connection. On April 17th, Anna's body was discovered in the forest. Initially, investigators didn't know her identity, as there was no identification found with her body, and she had only been in the state for about a month. The crime scene lacked a murder weapon, but was littered with trash. However, amidst the debris, a clear plastic bag caught their attention. Inside, they found a KFC receipt, an empty Pepsi cup, and a KFC chicken paper bag. The KFC receipt turned out to be the crucial clue in solving the case. It contained a date, time, and debit card number, which led investigators to Kevin Thomas. When questioned, Kevin revealed that he was best friends with William and had been getting to know Anna. He also shared a tradition with William, where they would eat lunch at KFC every Friday. The receipt, it turned out, was from a purchase made about a week before Kevin's questioning. The investigation into Anna's death led to the discovery of William's deceitful behavior. In his interview, Kevin revealed that William had borrowed his shotgun, claiming he wanted to go to the woods to clear his head. However, William never returned the weapon. The police began to suspect William and Michelle after hearing Kevin's statement. Following Anna's death, William's behavior became increasingly unusual and suspicious. He withdrew money from Anna's bank account to pay off his debts, and was caught on camera buying cigars and Star Wars Legos at various stores. William also confided in Kevin that he was spending money recklessly to cope with his emotions. Furthermore, he began researching time travel and even reached out to strangers on WhatsApp, offering to exchange his soul for the opportunity to go back in time. William wanted to travel back in time to April 16th to prevent a situation caused by his best friend's mistake. However, on that day, William was seen crying in a store employee's arms, claiming his girlfriend had just broken up with him. He had moved back in with Michelle, but was picked up by the police and questioned. The police asked William about his whereabouts on April 16th, and he said he was on a drive with Michelle. When asked about Anna, he denied having a romantic relationship with her, saying they had only gone on 2 dates, and he had ended things. According to William, their last interaction was in mid-March, when Anna, mistakenly, posted their engagement on Facebook, causing trouble with Michelle. When questioned about the trash found near his late fiancée, or the woman he dated, William admitted to littering, but claimed it was just KFC trash and a can from the general store, not related to Anna's death. About 40 miles separated the Alp General Store from the logging road. However, the investigators did not believe William's alibi. Lieutenant Chris Duffett, one of the investigators, quickly increased the pressure by revealing that William's trash had been discovered near a murder victim at a different location. Initially, William reacted with surprise and heartbreak, feigning disbelief that he was being questioned about a murder. 2 days after Anna Rapina's body was found, her fiancé William Hargrove was arrested for her murder on April 19th. During the investigation, Michelle was also questioned about her whereabouts on April 16th, the day Anna was killed. At first, Michelle stuck to a rehearsed alibi, claiming she and William had spent the day together, with William picking her up from her mother's house and going on a drive. However, Michelle later changed her story, admitting she had lied initially. She then claimed that she and William had planned to meet up, but he never called or showed up. When the police revealed that William was in custody for murder, Michelle's response was surprisingly calm, saying only, "Okay." The investigator pressed Michelle on her lack of emotion, which eventually broke down, and she tearfully attributed her initial calm to being in shock. William Hargrove was indicted on charges of murder, identity theft, and 2 counts of theft in June 2018. His trial began in October 2019, with the prosecution seeking the maximum penalties for each charge, while the defense argued for a more lenient sentence. William's defenders claimed he was innocent and that Melissa, the spurned lover, was the true culprit. However, the prosecution presented a strong case against William, backed by evidence and motive. The evidence showed that William was torn between 2 lovers, with Anna pressuring him to make a choice. There were records of William and Anna driving together in an Alon car. On the day of Anna's murder, William's cell phone was tracked to the logging road at 4:30 p.m. The shotgun used to kill Anna was found in William's car, with his fingerprints being the only ones on the weapon. Despite denying any involvement in Anna's death, William was caught using her money to go shopping and pay off his car insurance. He was even filmed withdrawing cash from an ATM using her card. The prosecution argued that William had driven Anna to the forest, gotten her out of the car, and then executed her with his shotgun. The prosecution claimed that William was faced with a choice between Anna and Michelle, leading to his actions. In contrast, the defense argued that their client was innocent. According to the prosecution, the evidence pointed to Melissa as the perpetrator. A threat from Melissa to build a snowman with Anna, her cell phone found near the logging road, and Anna's cell phone discovered in Melissa's house suggested that Melissa had planned the crime. Melissa, who was not charged with any crimes, testified as a witness for the prosecution. She revealed that she worked as a late-night cab driver and was married to an Oregon State University instructor, but their marriage was loveless and open. She met William at a bar where he worked and, with her husband's permission, began a romantic relationship with him. As they grew closer, William rented a room in her house. When Anna entered the picture, Melissa was not threatened, having a similar open relationship with William. Melissa explained that by her second visit, she couldn't tolerate the situation anymore, especially when she saw her own wedding ring on Anna's finger. Although she had given William an ultimatum, she had no role in William's actions that hurt Anna. Melissa clarified that she never intended for Anna to get hurt or killed. She denied the defense's allegations, stating that the threat about building a snowman was just a joke, a light-hearted family comment, even if it was a bit extreme. She acknowledged that her cell phone was found in the forest, but William was the one who drove her there. She didn't know why or what he planned. Furthermore, William had given her Anna's cell phone the day before he was questioned. As his partner, she naturally held onto it for him. Melissa's testimony lasted 14 hours, and she was not the only one. Around 70 other people testified, including Anna's mother, William's best friend and roommate, some of Melissa's family members, and others. Throughout the case, Melissa faced intense scrutiny, particularly in her hometown in Oregon, where she was criticized and ostracized by the locals. Michelle had reached a low point and attempted suicide, but fortunately, it was unsuccessful. The prosecutor praised Michelle's efforts to take responsibility, calling her actions tough and super tough. After a month of court appearances, the judge asked the jury to deliver their verdict. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours and returned with a decision. Despite the defense's efforts, they couldn't find Michelle guilty of Anna's death. There was no physical evidence linking Michelle to the crime scene or the weapon used. In fact, she had a solid alibi. She was celebrating Easter at her mother's house, and multiple witnesses could vouch for her presence. On the other hand, William maintained his not guilty plea, but the overwhelming evidence against him led to his conviction on all charges. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 25 years. Anna's attorney announced plans to appeal the verdict. Notably, the jurors developed a strong connection with each other during the trial. After the trial, they visited the logging trail, where Anna's life was tragically cut short, to pay their respects to her memory. Anna will be remembered as a courageous young woman who left her home in Russia to build a new life in the United States. Anna was a loving person who openly shared her love with others. She was cherished by many during her lifetime, and her memory will continue to be loved and honored. The prosecutor, Amy Matsko, stated, "Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Michael Haight. Michael Haight was born on January 7, 1980 in Seattle, Washington, and later moved to Cedar City, Utah, with his family after his father finished dental school. As a child, Michael was very active and enjoyed playing sports like baseball, basketball, and soccer. He also excelled in school and achieved the rank of Eagle Scout. After graduating from high school in 1998, Michael worked at a fish plant in Alaska for the summer, where he quickly proved himself as a leader, rising to the position of line manager and overseeing a team of over a dozen men. This experience showcased his strong work ethic and dedication. Michael then embarked on a mission trip to South Brazil with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which deepened his faith and commitment to his religious community. When he returned to the United States, he pursued a business degree at Southern Utah University, graduating in 2004. During his time at the university, Michael met his future wife, Tasha Earle, and they fell in love. They got married in the St. George Temple on May 10, 2003. Michael appeared to be a devoted husband and father, often spending quality time with his family at sports events, school concerts, and working on projects together in the garage. On January 4, 2023, a shocking discovery was made at the Haight residence in Enoch. 8 bodies were found, leaving investigators and neighbors stunned. The events leading up to this gruesome finding began when Tasha Haight missed an online appointment and her husband Michael failed to show up for work. Their concerned colleagues contacted the police to perform a welfare check at the Haight residence. When officers arrived, they knocked on the door but received no response. As they surveyed the property, it seemed empty. Considering the Haight's had 5 children, the police reached out to the Iron County School District to check if any of the kids were in school that day. However, it was found that none of the children were present. Before entering the home, the police cleared the premises to ensure it was safe to do so. After a thorough search, authorities confirmed that no one required medical attention and there was no active threat. The Haight's single-story residence with a basement was declared a crime scene, and detectives arrived shortly after. In the main bedroom, detectives found 4-year-old Gavin lying on his stomach, his head turned to the left, with one arm under his head on a pillow and a blanket covering part of his body. Tasha, Gavin's mother, was also partially covered by the blanket. On the other side of the bed, detectives found an older woman, later identified as Gail Earle, Tasha's mother, lying on her back with her head resting on a pillow and partially covered by a blanket, similar to her daughter and grandson. In Bry's room, the 12-year-old girl was found lying in bed, slightly inclined and partially covered with a blanket. In Aman's room, a 7-year-old boy was found lying face down in the corner, without a pillow or blanket. His twin sister Sienna was discovered in her bedroom, lying on her left side in bed, with her head on a pillow and covered with a blanket. The eldest child, 17-year-old Macy, was found in her bed, with her head on a pillow and her body covered with a blanket. In the exercise room of the basement, the detectives found Michael Haight lying on top of a sleeping bag. Sadly, all 8 family members were found dead from gunshot wounds. It quickly became clear to the detectives that Michael Haight was the main suspect, and they believed he had killed his wife, mother-in-law, and 5 children before taking his own life. When detectives started investigating, a neighbor provided vital information that helped them reconstruct the crime's timeline. The neighbor told police she woke up at 3:30 a.m. to use the bathroom, and as she left her room, heard a loud bang that sounded like fireworks. However, realizing it was after the allowed date for fireworks in the neighborhood, she felt annoyed rather than alarmed by the noise. The neighbor reported hearing an initial loud bang, followed by 2 more in quick succession, then a short pause, another bang, and a longer pause before the final bang. Based on this testimony and the condition of the 8 bodies found inside the house, the detective inferred that the loud noises heard around 3:30 a.m. were directly connected to the events that unfolded that night, leading them to believe that Michael Haight committed the brutal killings during this time frame. During the investigation into the Haight family murders, detectives discovered a 2020 report from an unnamed individual who had notified the Utah Division of Child and Family Services about abuse in the Haight household. According to the report, 14-year-old Macy had confided in this individual about her fear of her father, sparking a further investigation. The authorities then interviewed Macy and her parents separately. During Macy's interview, she revealed disturbing information. Her father had choked her on multiple occasions, and she lived in fear of being killed by him. She reported that the violent attacks began in 2017, and recounted an incident where her father grabbed her by the shoulders and pushed her into a wooden piece of furniture. Michael Haight denied hurting his daughter when questioned by detectives, passing off the incidents as misunderstandings and attributing his emotional state to his father's recent death and his brother's divorce. He claimed to have taken out his frustrations on his older daughter. Despite this, Tasha chose not to press charges, and the Utah Department of Children and Family Services, the Enoch Police Department, and the Iron County Prosecutor's Office also declined to pursue the case, as it did not meet the legal requirements for prosecution. A lethality assessment was conducted with Tasha, which indicated that her relationship with Michael was not life-threatening. As a result, victim services were made available to Tasha and her children for several months. Further investigation revealed a different side of Michael, unknown to the community. According to Tasha's friends, they had to speak quietly or turn on the kitchen water when visiting Tasha, as they suspected Michael was monitoring and eavesdropping on their conversations. Tasha's friends would often help her clean the house when they visited, which prevented Michael from finding fault with her. When texting Tasha, her friends noticed that she would respond with brief, positive messages, likely to maintain a positive image in case Michael read them. This suggested that everything was fine in their marriage. The detectives investigating the case discovered that Michael exhibited highly controlling behavior towards Tasha. For instance, he would take away her car keys and phone to restrict her freedom. Another red flag was his overreaction when Tasha bought a $30 rug from Walmart to replace a dirty one, which was a legitimate need. Michael's anger was unwarranted, and he claimed the purchase was excessive. Tasha confided in her friends that her 7-year-old son, Aman, was increasingly imitating Michael's bad behavior. When Tasha gave Aman instructions, he would respond, "That's not my job," which concerned Tasha as it showed his lack of responsibility and disregard for authority. Tasha's friends reported that in 2022, Tasha attempted to prioritize her own well-being by getting her nails done, a rare treat for her given her many responsibilities. However, her husband Michael refused to let her do so, imposing strict limits on her autonomy and freedom. Moreover, Michael frequently disregarded or ignored Tasha's instructions, and their friend Aman often followed his lead in doing so. Tasha felt more confident in her appearance after indulging herself, and she decided to get her nails done every month. However, Michael was unhappy about this decision and expressed his disapproval, worried about the cost. Tasha explained that it would only cost $25 per month, but Michael was unconvinced, arguing that the money could be better spent on their children. Michael's reaction was rooted in his need for control and sense of financial responsibility towards their family. Around the same time, Tasha started prioritizing her self-care and began losing weight, which had been a sensitive topic for her since Michael had often called her fat and ugly. However, instead of being supportive, Michael became furious and accused Tasha of cheating on him, trying to explain the sudden change in her appearance. Michael's controlling behavior escalated as he tried to manipulate Tasha's weight loss, pleading with her to stop losing weight because he was worried that other men might find her attractive. This demand was driven by his own insecurities and desire for complete control over Tasha's body and behavior. Tasha's friends also told the police about an incident where the kitchen table broke and Tasha needed to buy a new one. However, Michael refused to give her the money, further demonstrating his controlling behavior. Tasha was fed up with the old table and decided to take initiative by refinishing it to make it look better and more functional. However, Michael was unhappy with her decision because she didn't ask for his permission first. Michael was extremely frugal during the holiday season, despite earning a good income. He only gave Tasha $100 for each of their 5 children to buy presents, which was not enough in Tasha's opinion. Tasha always made sure her children had a wonderful Christmas, but Michael refused to provide more funds, claiming that he worked hard for his money and saw no reason to give more to his family. He believed that his income was rightfully his alone. Michael's passion for reducing waste and conserving resources led him to implement strict rules on household habits. He forced Tasha to wash and reuse plastic bags, even if they had been used only once or multiple times. This excessive demand for reusing bags added to Tasha's responsibilities, leaving her feeling burdened and overwhelmed. Michael's controlling behavior extended to every aspect of Tasha's life, including her daily routines. For instance, he demanded that she use baby wipes for cleaning, claiming it was better for the environment and more cost-effective. However, this requirement caused Tasha discomfort, hygiene issues, and unnecessary stress. If Tasha failed to follow Michael's instructions, she would face severe consequences, which he made clear would lead to serious trouble. This threat instilled fear and submission in Tasha, leaving her no choice but to obey Michael's demands. Tasha confided in her friends that while Michael had been cruel to her throughout their marriage, he had never directed this cruelty towards their children until the late 2010s. However, over time, the abuse towards their daughter Macy escalated, driving her to consider suicide. Michael had unrealistically high expectations for his daughter Macy, demanding she earn perfect grades despite her struggles, which were exacerbated by the emotional burden of his abusive behavior. This pressure was crushing for Macy. Macy's friends shared a disturbing incident with the detective. One evening, Michael returned home to find Macy comforted by her mother. He became enraged and ordered Macy to clean her room. This event left Macy deeply disturbed, remembering the hatred and evil she saw in her father's eyes. The detectives also discovered an incident where 7-year-old Briley disobeyed Michael while playing with a changing table. Michael responded by blaming his wife Tasha for their children's behavior, calling them the worst and most disrespectful in the world. He then humiliated Tasha, calling her fat and ugly in front of their 5 children. This painful incident prompted Tasha to plan her escape and file for divorce after 20 years of marriage. Tasha realized she had to leave her husband Michael after witnessing his abusive behavior and lack of self-control. She knew staying in the marriage would negatively impact her children, and their well-being was more important than her marital commitment. In December 2022, Tasha filed for divorce, but asked for the papers to be delivered after Christmas to give her children one last normal holiday before the separation. When Michael received the papers, he tried to act normal, but Tasha saw through it. He told her to leave the children behind, but she refused, taking them to her mother's home in Lynn, Utah. Michael showed up at his mother-in-law's house, trying to convince Tasha to go for a ride with him, but she refused, sensing danger. After filing for divorce, Tasha's mother moved in to support her and the children. However, Michael's actions worsened the situation. He refused to leave the family home, instead moving into the basement. Tasha discovered he had secretly transferred $220,000 from their children's savings accounts without her knowledge or consent. She also found that her inherited firearms were missing, leaving her family vulnerable. The couple's children, Macy and Briley, were affected by the constant drama at home. Macy had a secret phone to record her father's outbursts as evidence for the divorce, while Briley found solace at a neighbor's house. Both girls were relieved about their parents' divorce. On January 3, 2023, Tasha met with her attorney, expressing concerns about her divorce and Michael's volatile behavior. Although she had relocated him to the basement, the attorneys pressed her about feeling safe. Tasha reassured them she never feared for her or her children's well-being, but in hindsight, her optimism was tragically misplaced. A disturbing discovery emerged from the digital evidence found on the family's computers and cell phones. Just days before the tragic shooting, Michael made a series of concerning Google searches on December 30th at 10:41 p.m. These searches focused on firearms and shooting-related topics, revealing his sinister intentions. The search results showed Michael had asked alarming questions, such as the loudness of a 9mm gunshot and what a gunshot sounds like. Before taking his own life, Michael wrote a note expressing his desire to end the controlling behavior he felt he was subjected to by his wife. He stated that he couldn't handle the situation for another day and wanted to escape the manipulation. Michael's note conveyed deep frustration and desperation, as he repeatedly asked for help but felt ignored. He emphasized his determination not to be a burden to society. The details of this case have left many in shock, revealing a deeply dysfunctional family plagued by violence. Michael's actions were premeditated and calculated, as he carefully planned the murders to catch his wife and children off guard. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Cody Johnson. At the age of 23, Cody was looking for a long-term partner. He confided in his friends about his desire to marry a woman who shared his values, specifically someone from a religious background. On Halloween 2011, he met Jordan, who would eventually become a pivotal figure in his life. Born in August 1991, Jordan grew up in Kalispell in a deeply religious family. She attended the Faith Baptist Church, where she worked with children and families, and her ultimate goal was to become a stay-at-home mother. When Cody and Jordan first met on Halloween, they quickly formed a connection. Although initially shy, Jordan opened up to Cody about her dreams of starting a family and her love for nature. Cody was smitten, but Jordan, who was only 20 at the time, was not ready for a serious relationship. They went on a few casual dates, but maintained a platonic relationship. However, Cody's feelings for Jordan only intensified, and he made a concerted effort to win her over. He joined her church, First Baptist, and began to socialize with her friends and community. Before long, their friendship blossomed into something more. Cody and Jordan officially started dating in November 2011, and Cody became completely enamored with her, wanting to spend all his time with her. Cody was convinced he wanted to marry Jordan just weeks into their relationship, despite her desire to remain chaste until marriage. Those close to they noticed Jordan didn't seem as invested in Cody as he was in her. While some attributed this to her shy nature, others were concerned about the imbalance in their relationship. They rarely showed affection in public, didn't hold hands, and didn't flirt. So, when Cody proposed in December 2012, many of Jordan's friends were surprised she accepted. They thought she wasn't ready for marriage after just a year of dating, but they were happy for her. Jordan eagerly shared her engagement ring on Instagram, captioning the post, "He proposed. Best early Christmas present ever." The wedding was set for June 29, 2013, and planning began immediately. Cody was heavily involved, along with Jordan's best friend and matron of honor, Kimberly Martinez. However, it was Jordan who seemed most enthusiastic about the wedding planning, even going so far as to perform a song with custom-written lyrics by Elizabeth Shee, which would later seem eerily prophetic. When someone, including Kimberly, brought up the idea of actually being married to Cody, Jordan's mood would quickly deteriorate. She repeatedly questioned Kimberly, her matron of honor, about whether she was making the right decision. On her wedding day, Jordan's true feelings about the marriage were evident. She was anxious and avoided eye contact with Cody, frequently looking down. Despite regaining her composure for the wedding photos and first dance, Jordan's unease persisted. The morning after the wedding, Jordan confided in a friend via text from their honeymoon hotel room. She revealed that she had not consummated the marriage and had rejected Cody's advances, not only on their wedding night, but for the next 6 nights as well. Jordan was anxious about Cody's expectations and didn't want to be intimate. She planned to use the excuse that her period had started, hoping it would work, as she feared being forced into something would cause her to panic. Jordan had an intense fear of sex due to her faith and reservations about Cody, causing her to feel anxious about intimacy with him. This anxiety reached a boiling point on July 7th, 8 days after their wedding, when Cody canceled his golfing trip with friends at the last minute because Jordan had planned a surprise for him. After attending church and spending some time alone on the lake, they had dinner with friends at Dairy Queen. Cody then went home with Jordan, and this was the last time anyone saw him. When Cody failed to show up for work, his co-worker Cameron Fredrickson became concerned. As a reliable and punctual employee, Cody's absence was unusual. Cameron decided to visit Cody's new house, which he had purchased with Jordan before their wedding. After knocking with no response, Cameron let himself in and searched the house for any clues about their disappearance. However, he found nothing. Cameron's concern turned to fear when he discovered Cody's phone in the garage. It was unusual for Cody to be without his phone, and this sparked grave concerns. After making several calls, Cameron learned that no one had seen Cody since dinner at Dairy Queen at 8:30. He immediately went to the police station to file a missing persons report, and the authorities took the case seriously from the start. Officer Chaz Zimmerman, one of the first to question Cameron, was struck by his distress. Zimmerman found it odd that Cameron's boss, not his wife Kimberly, reported him missing. Later that day, Kimberly finally reached Jordan, who claimed that Cameron had left with friends in a black car with Washington plates. According to Jordan, Cameron had received a disturbing phone call at the restaurant, so she gave him space. However, that night, Kimberly retrieved her phone charger from their car and discovered a text from Cody. The message stated that Cameron had planned to go for a ride with out-of-town friends who were visiting. Cody was unclear about the friends' identities, but Cameron always took his visiting friends to Glacier Park. Jordan told the police that she didn't recognize the men who were involved in Cody's disappearance, and that they hadn't fought that night. She suggested that Cody might have gone joyriding with his friends from out of town as a possible reason for his disappearance. When questioned about why she didn't report Cody missing, Jordan explained that she didn't want to upset him by filing a report if he was planning to return within a few hours. However, as the hours turned into days, Cody's friends and family gathered at the family home, expressing confusion over his sudden disappearance. It didn't seem like something Cody would do, leaving his wife without a word. Jordan maintained her story until Kimberly confronted her about it. As the conversation continued, Jordan became increasingly uncomfortable. Eventually, she became so agitated that she threw her wedding ring across the room. While some thought this was just her unusual way of coping with the situation, Kimberly was convinced that Jordan was hiding something. The next day, she returned home and called her friend. Meanwhile, Jordan was summoned to the police station, where she was confronted by officers about the inconsistencies in her story. One of the officers said, "Jordan, I've gathered information that contradicts what you're telling me. I've spoken to several people, and it's crucial that I know you're being honest." Jordan responded, "I understand, and I think there's more to the story." Around the same time, Sher Johnson met with the police, armed with Cody's phone records from the day he vanished. She was worried about her son and hoped that the mysterious man Cody had called could provide some clues about his disappearance. However, it turned out that the mysterious caller was simply a friend returning a tool to Cody. The police quickly ruled him out as a suspect because he had a solid alibi. His wife was in labor at the time of Cody's disappearance. With all other leads exhausted, the police refocused their attention on Jordan. It was clear that she was hiding something, but her story didn't quite add up. On July 10th, a crucial breakthrough emerged in the case. An unexpected email arrived from Carmen Tony 607, claiming that Cody was dead and there was no need to continue searching. The message read, "Hello, Jordan. My name is Tony. There is no bother looking for Cody anymore. He is gone." Jordan showed the email to Hannah, remaining expressionless as he relayed the news. According to the email, Cody had supposedly died after falling off a cliff in Glacier National Park while with unknown companions. Hannah was devastated upon reading the message and urged Jordan to report it to the police immediately. Hannah recalled her reaction. "I was freaking out, asking what was going on. I read the email and it said Cody was gone." Jordan didn't show any emotion, didn't even cry. She just handed me the email and I started shaking. I told her to go to the police, and she did, but I was rushing her, saying, "Go, move, what are you doing?" Detective Corey Clark was frustrated that the investigation was ongoing, and an anonymous email hadn't provided the closure they needed. In fact, the email seemed suspiciously convenient, at providing the exact information they'd been searching for and advising them to call off the search. What bothered Clark more than the email's content was Jordan's reaction, or lack thereof. She seemed completely unfazed by the news, which implied her husband's death. Jordan's behavior became even more peculiar when she organized a trip to Glacier National Park with her friends and family to search for Cody. According to Hannah, Jordan was strangely chipper during the entire drive to the park, waving her hand out the window as they went. Despite finding nothing on the first day, they resumed their search on the second day, and it was then that Jordan suddenly claimed to have found Cody's body. Her announcement was met with skepticism. "I think he's down there," she said, leaving Clark wondering why on earth Cody would be in that location. It's baffling that someone would do such a thing. This wall serves a purpose, after all. The autopsy revealed that the victim's head and arms suffered the most damage from the fall. Cody's loved ones were heartbroken over his death, but Jordan felt a sense of relief. according to Hannah. Now that a body had been found, the authorities would finally close the case. However, there was still a major issue. The police had no idea who man Tony 607 was. When Jordan was first questioned about the mysterious message, she directed the police to Tony Stallcup, a fellow car enthusiast and acquaintance of Cody's. Although Tony hadn't seen Cody in several months, he was so worried about him that he gave the police full access to his accounts. The police were unable to find the email address they were looking for, and Jordan and Cody's phone records did not provide much information. As a result, they had to contact Google to obtain the IP address associated with Carmen Tony 607. While waiting for this information, the police re-interviewed Cody's family and friends. During these interviews, Kimberly finally shared with the police Jordan's fragile mental state leading up to her marriage to Cody. She had expressed doubts and fears about marrying him, asking Kimberly multiple times if she should go through with the wedding. Jordan confided in Kimberly about her horror and fear of having sex with Cody, even regretting that Ed had married him and wishing she could undo everything. When Kimberly advised Jordan to be honest with Cody about her feelings, Jordan responded, "I should be happy, but I'm not. If I tell him, it's going to break his heart." 2 days before Cody's disappearance, Jordan typed a disturbing message. "He held me down the other night, and he was in my face." On July 7th, the police discovered another revealing exchange, in which Jordan intended to talk to Cody, but was terrified of his reaction. Jordan went to her friend Kim's house later that day and recounted her conversation with Cody, which didn't go well. Cody became enraged, and she left to give him space, eventually spending the night at her step-parents' house. When the police learned about this, they became more suspicious of Jordan. Around the same time, they received information from Google that linked the email address Carmen Tony 67 to her stepfather's computer. Although a brief interview with each member of the Graham family suggested Jordan was behind the email, it wasn't conclusive evidence. However, cell phone records and security cameras painted a clearer picture. The records showed that Cody and Jordan's phones were in the vicinity of Glacier National Park on the night of Cody's disappearance. Security cameras even captured them entering the park at 9:17 p.m. Despite Jordan's initial denial of being with Cody that night, the evidence suggested otherwise. On July 18, 2013, the police brought Jordan in for questioning and presented her with the evidence. She broke down in tears and finally revealed her version of events from July 8th. According to Jordan, she confessed her marital doubts to Cody, leading to a massive argument. Jordan and her friend decided to take a trip to Glacier National Park and went to the Loop Trail. Jordan explained what happened next in her own words. If her friend hadn't intervened, Cody would have fallen face first down the hill. The detectives asked her, why did she turn around and push him? Jordan believed it was because her emotions were overwhelming at the time. She felt immense pressure, anger, and every other emotion all at once. The detectives were interested in her comment about a blindfold, as they suspected a connection to a stray scarf found near the crime scene. However, Jordan didn't provide any further information, and it was eventually proven to be unrelated. Jordan claimed that Cody's death was an accident, and that she didn't plan the assault in any way. Jordan explained that she hadn't planned to kill her husband, Cody. The situation escalated, and in the heat of the moment, she pushed him off the bridge. When asked about the incident, Jordan admitted that Cody had turned his back to her, facing the cliff, and she pushed him with both hands. She also confessed to creating a fake identity, Carmen Tony, and sending messages from her stepfather's house. Despite her confession, the police didn't charge Jordan that day, and she walked out of the station a free woman. However, they later arrested her at Cody's funeral on July 22nd, after she was seen texting on her phone, displaying a lack of respect that eroded any remaining sympathy for her. Rumors circulated that Jordan had killed Cody to escape their marriage without the embarrassment of divorce. Her behavior at the funeral, including texting, seemed to confirm these suspicions, implying that she was more concerned about herself than mourning Cody's death. Jordan's motives were called into question, as people wondered if she ever truly loved Cody. She was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and making false statements. After reviewing the evidence, the jury added premeditated first-degree murder to the list of charges. Her trial began on December 9, 2013. From the start, the prosecution aggressively challenged Jordan's story, raising doubts and inconsistencies. They questioned why she lied to Cody's friends and family, and whether she was truly remorseful or innocent. The prosecution's questioning was relentless, and Jordan's situation looked increasingly dire. The testimonies from Cody's loved ones further damaged Jordan's case, portraying her as a heartless wife who murdered her husband to avoid intimacy. Her defense team attempted to argue self-defense, but it seemed unlikely to succeed. Faced with the possibility of a worse outcome, Jordan opted for a plea deal, accepting a 30-year prison sentence without parole in exchange for the prosecution dropping the first-degree murder charge. Before Jordan was sentenced, she tried to withdraw her guilty plea when she learned the prosecution intended to pursue a charge of premeditated first-degree murder, which carried a maximum 50-year sentence. The decision was up to District Judge Donald Malloy, who had to decide whether to accept her original plea or start a new trial. On December 13, 2013, Judge Malloy sentenced Jordan Lynn Graham to 30 years and 5 months in prison. Despite Jordan's attempt to reverse her plea, her case was not reopened or re-examined. The federal prosecution aimed to set a precedent with her case, sending a message that anyone who commits murder under federal jurisdiction will face swift and severe punishment. As a result, Jordan will not be released from prison until she is over 52 years old. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jamie Melgar. Sandra Melgar often lies in her small prison cell, reflecting on the unexpected turns her life has taken. She never imagined she'd become a widow and a suspect in her husband's murder. A year and a half after his tragic death, a grand jury indicted her, and nearly 5 years later, a jury convicted her based solely on circumstantial evidence. There was no clear motive or physical proof linking her to the crime. Since her husband's passing, every day has been a living nightmare for Sandra, now 59. Sometimes, she still expects to go back home and catches herself wanting to share things with him, only to remember he's gone. In a recent interview, Sandra's blue eyes were red and puffy from crying. She said with tears streaming down her pale cheeks that it didn't feel like he was really gone, and that it was like he was just away on a trip. She paused, then continued that she tried not to dwell on it, and knew she would see him again. For the past 10 months, Sandra had been imprisoned at the William P. Hobby Unit, a women's prison in the Texas countryside. Sandra maintains contact with her friends and family, many of whom still believe she is innocent. Despite the difficulties of communicating in a noisy prison environment and her soft voice, she regularly talks to her daughter, Elizabeth Liz Melgar Rose. Sandra also writes letters to her friends, who keep her updated about her Pomeranian, Lola, who was at home on the night of the incident. Thanks to the efforts of one of her closest friends, Sandra gets to spend a couple of hours with a rotating group of friends and family every weekend. Her daughter Liz is her biggest supporter, acting as her spokesperson and passionately arguing that her mother's imprisonment is a grave injustice that has deprived her of both parents. Liz mentioned that she had never seen her mother so broken and devastated, and that she had never been able to recover from that. Sandra's husband Jamie met a tragic end on December 23, 2012. Sandra has no memory of that night, which has raised suspicions among investigators. However, she maintains her innocence, insisting she did not commit the crime. As Sandra sits in her prison cell, her thoughts often go back to the evening of their 32nd wedding anniversary, on December 23, 2012. That night, she and Jamie had celebrated together. Later, she was awoken by their barking dogs to find herself bound and gagged on the closet floor, her head throbbing and her body aching. Sandra tried to stretch her legs and peek through the gap under the closet door, but her bindings and 2 hip replacements limited her movement. Even if she could free herself, a chair blocked the door handle, preventing her escape. In the same closet, she would later discover her husband Jamie, lying lifeless with 31 stab wounds to his hands and chest. The white walls were now stained with blood, and a grey telephone cord was used to bind Jamie's feet. A medical examiner later determined that all of Jamie's injuries were defensive wounds, indicating that he had fought back against his attacker instead of trying to escape. One particularly vicious blow had nearly severed his right thumb, which likely contributed to the extensive blood splatters found in the closet and bedroom. The bedroom was in disarray, with dresser drawers open and clothes, books, and pill bottles scattered all over the floor. Sandra's purse and wallet had been rummaged through, and their contents were strewn across the blood-stained white comforter on the bed. A small white medical stool at the foot of the bed had blood stains on it, suggesting that it had been used as a makeshift surface for a knife during the attack. Nearby, a wooden chair had blood dripping down its back. The jacuzzi bathtub, where Sandra and Jamie had celebrated their 32nd wedding anniversary just the night before, told a tragic story. A blood-stained white blouse, a green towel, and a silver chef knife with a 6-inch blade covered in blood droplets in every crevice were found in the bathtub, revealing the chilling details of the events that had unfolded. Police identified a knife as the murder weapon, a stark contrast to the joyful evening that had preceded it. Earlier that night, Sandra and Jamie had celebrated their 32nd wedding anniversary with dinner at their favorite Mexican restaurant, planning to continue the celebration in their jacuzzi with candles, cocktails, strawberries, and whipped cream. After more than 3 decades together, Jaime and Sandra remained deeply in love, as Sandra would later tell the authorities. They had met in their senior year at Lamar High School, where Jamie was immediately smitten with the 17-year-old Sandra, who had blue eyes and blonde hair. Sandra was drawn to his sense of humor, intelligence, and kind nature, while Jamie admired her intelligence, down-to-earth personality, and humility. Before long, they became extremely close, and 2 years after graduating from high school, they got married in a simple ceremony at a courthouse in downtown Houston. On their anniversary, Sandra and Jamie relaxed in their jacuzzi, reflecting on their past and future. They dreamed of traveling, visiting the Grand Canyon, Ireland, and seeing the Northern Lights. With Jamie's retirement from the Houston Independent School District approaching, they envisioned a beachfront property to settle down after their adventures. Sandra and her husband Jamie spent a romantic evening together, giving each other massages and relaxing in the jacuzzi. However, their peaceful night was interrupted by their dogs barking. Jamie got out of the bathroom to take care of the dogs, and that was the last time Sandra saw him alive. Meanwhile, Jamie's brother Herman was waiting outside the house, wondering why no one was answering the door. Herman and his family had been invited over for dinner, but Jamie and Sandra weren't responding to calls or the doorbell. Herman found it strange, especially since Jamie's truck was still in the driveway and Sandra's car was parked in the open garage. Herman told his family to wait by the front door while he went to the backyard to take a look. He noticed a plastic tarp hanging from the pergola on the back porch, which was evidence of Jamie's recent DIY project. Herman then went back to the front yard and decided to check the laundry room door inside the garage. If it was locked, he thought they would leave, but to his surprise, the door was unlocked. He entered the house, finding it dimly lit, gray and stuffy, with all the blinds closed. As he opened the front door, the dogs started barking and jumping around, creating an unsettling atmosphere. That was when they heard muffled screams. Herman rushed to the back of the house and found a large chair blocking the closet door in the bathroom. Inside, he found Sandra lying on the floor, in a black satin nightgown, screaming for help. Herman and his wife Maria worked to free Sandra from the tight restraints that bound her arms and legs. To help, Herman got a pair of scissors from the bathroom. Meanwhile, Sandra repeatedly asked, "Where's Jamie?" She had visible bruises on her arms, including a dark one on her left bicep. After Herman and Maria finally freed her, Sandra rushed into the bedroom and found Jamie's lifeless body hidden in the closet, his feet sticking out. Despite it being clear that he was dead, given his cold, pale, and naked body, she still checked for a pulse. Sandra put a blue jacket on her injured husband Jamie, and with Maria's help, got him back to the bathroom. When the paramedics arrived, Sandra was extremely distraught, making it hard for her to talk to the first paramedic, Stephanie Roberts. According to Roberts' report, Sandra was in shock, crying periodically, and had lost track of time. Her last clear memory was around 1 a.m., and she was unaware that 15 hours had passed. The police noticed bruises on Sandra's hands and arms, as well as a small scratch on her left thumb, but no visible blood. Sandra told the police that after Jamie let the dogs in, she got out of the bathtub and went to her closet to get dressed. Then, she claimed to have no memory until she woke up in the closet at an unknown time, eventually screaming for help, but possibly falling back asleep due to a seizure. Sandra had several serious medical conditions, including lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, and grand mal seizures, which had forced her to resign from her job as a licensed vocational nurse. In the weeks leading up to Jamie's murder, Sandra experienced warning signs of an impending seizure, known as auras. After a seizure, she would sleep for hours, then wake up feeling disoriented, confused, and in pain. During the investigation, Sandra was questioned by Sheriff Sergeants Jacques Cazal and James Douay at the Harris County Sheriff's Office. Sandra felt uncomfortable in the cold interrogation room and asked to take a polygraph test, despite feeling cold and shaky. The 3-hour interrogation focused on the 36 hours leading up to Jamie's death. Sandra spoke softly and complained of having a headache. She recalled specific details about her activities, such as removing her boots in the bedroom and their conversation in the jacuzzi. However, she struggled to remember other details, and her memory was unclear. Sandra initially said Jamie had left her alone for 15 minutes to let the dogs in before she got out of the jacuzzi. Later, she thought it might have been around 5 minutes. She admitted to being bad at keeping track of time and was just making guesses about the timeline. When asked about their future plans, Sandra became overwhelmed and burst into tears. Cazal suggested that Sandra might have been involved in Jamie's death, which prompted Sandra to ask for a lawyer, saying she wasn't going to answer any more questions because she felt confused. Douay asked Sandra if she would take a polygraph test, but she refused, citing concerns about her nervousness, physical symptoms, and the potential for the results to be used against her. She wanted to consult with a lawyer first. Douay seemed frustrated by her refusal, implying that it suggested she had something to hide. He warned Sandra that the investigation would be thorough and that they would gather information about her, her husband, and their relationships with neighbors and family members. Sandra hoped the investigation would focus on someone else, insisting she wasn't involved in Jamie's murder. When asked about her relationship with her husband, she described it as great, even better lately. As the interrogation neared its end, the detectives grew frustrated with Sandra's claims of having no memory of the events. They pressed her, wondering how she could have been unaware of her husband being brutally stabbed in the bedroom just a few feet away, and why she hadn't heard his screams. Detective Cazal implored her to help, but Sandra repeatedly denied having heard anything, covering her face with her hands. Cazal and Douay left the cold, confined room, leaving Sandra crying with her face in her hands. Later, Cazal contacted the Harris County District Attorney's Office to file murder charges against Sandra. However, the DA's office ultimately decided not to pursue those charges due to a lack of evidence. 2 days after the murder, Liz met with Cazal and Douay, telling them that various items were missing from the house, including a TV and medication. She also shared information about her mother's health issues and seizures. Unfortunately, this meeting didn't lead to any significant breakthroughs in the case. Liz continued to call the authorities, asking about the progress of the investigation, but eventually, they stopped responding to her calls. A year and a half later, Sandra was quietly indicted for Jamie's murder by a grand jury. However, the grand jury proceedings were kept secret, leaving the public unaware of the discussions and evidence presented. Sandra's case moved slowly, passing from one prosecutor to another over the next 3 years. Finally, it landed on Colleen Barnett's desk in May 2017. Barnett was a seasoned prosecutor, with a reputation for being diligent and fair. Despite the challenges in the case, including no apparent motive, no confession, and no direct evidence linking Sandra to the crime, Barnett believed in the case. During the 13-day trial, Barnett portrayed Sandra as a calculating murderer who had planned Jamie's death. She claimed that Sandra had tied Jamie's feet with a gray telephone cord and then stabbed him with a knife. Barnett also highlighted the presence of a bag of sex toys found on the bed, which Sandra later claimed was a gag gift from a friend. Although Barnett couldn't pinpoint a motive for Sandra's actions, she presented various theories, including Jamie's life insurance policy and Sandra's supposed desire to end their marriage. Sandra's attorney, George Sechrist, presented a different perspective on the case, arguing that Sandra was a victim of investigators who had prematurely settled on a theory. He claimed that the lack of physical evidence connecting Sandra to the crime, including the absence of her blood at the scene and cuts on her hands, suggested that she was not involved. Instead, Sechrist proposed that Sandra had fallen prey to a home invasion, suffered a head injury, and was bound in her closet while intruders killed her husband. Prosecutor Barnett countered with expert testimony from Celestina Rossi, a blood spatter analyst and crime scene reconstructionist. Rossi testified that the crime scene did not match a home invasion scenario, citing the lack of forced entry, undisturbed dresser drawers, and a lit candle on Jamie's nightstand, indicating no struggle near the closet where Jamie was killed. The majority of the blood was confined to the closet, with spatter on a chair, medical stool, and comforter, which Rossi attributed to the injury to Jamie's artery. Rossi concurred with the medical examiner's report that Jamie's wounds were defensive and noted his loaded handgun near his body in the closet, untouched. This evidence, Rossi suggested, pointed to Sandra's guilt. The jury deliberated for 8 hours over several days before finding Sandra guilty of murder, sentencing her to 27 years in prison. The jury foreman later explained that they did not believe Sandra was a threat to society and wanted to give her a chance to see her grandchildren. When the verdict was read, Sandra let out a shriek and nearly collapsed into her seat. The courtroom, filled with supporters who believed in her innocence, was left in stunned disbelief. As Sandra was escorted out of the courtroom, she paused to embrace her daughter, Liz, one last time. Liz was devastated, feeling that the justice system had failed her family, taking away both her parents. Sandra's supporters were outraged at Barnett, accusing her of manipulating Sandra's words, exploiting her religious beliefs, and fabricating a false narrative that led to her imprisonment. In contrast, the jury foreman stood by the verdict, believing Barnett's version of events was the most plausible. He found Sandra's story inconsistent, citing her changing account of their return home and the time Jamie spent in the jacuzzi before she retreated to her closet. He also questioned the authenticity of her seizure that night, referencing her medical records, which indicated stable seizures, and her visit to the neurologist after the murder, during which she made no mention of the alleged seizure. The foreman stated that the more he listened to Sandra's statements, the more he realized they didn't make sense. He believed the evidence pointed to her guilt, but acknowledged that the jury could be wrong. A month after the verdict, Sandra's lawyer, Sechrist, filed a motion for a new trial, arguing that the investigation was inept. and the prosecution's case was built on conjecture and hypotheses with no solid evidence. Seacrest contended that Sandra was innocent, but Judge Johnson denied the motion, setting in motion a potentially lengthy appeals process. Sandra, seated behind a glass partition, maintained her innocence, softly asserting that she did not kill her husband. When asked who might have committed the crime, she replied, "I wish I knew." She clings to hope for a future release, whether through a successful appeal or parole, which she will be eligible for in 2031, when she will be 71 years old. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sandra Cantu. Sandra Cantu was an 8-year-old girl who lived with her mother, Maria Chavez, and their family in the Orchard Estates mobile home park in Tracy, California. Despite her parents being separated, Sandra remained close to her father and enjoyed a positive relationship with him. Sandra was a friendly and energetic child who loved playing with her friends in the neighborhood. She was known for her bright smile and optimistic outlook, making her a favorite among her peers and the adults who knew her. At the time, she was a second-grade student at Melville S. Jacobson Elementary School. On March 27, 2009, Sandra returned home from school around 2 p.m. and went out to play with her friends. Her mother, Maria, usually let her play outside until dinner time. However, when Sandra failed to return home by 7 p.m., Maria began to worry. Maria tried to locate Sandra by calling her friends, but none of them had seen her. She then drove around the neighborhood, asking people if they had seen Sandra, but no one had any information. At 7:53 p.m., Maria called 911 to report her daughter missing. The Tracy Police Department quickly responded to the mobile home park and launched a search operation. They asked Maria to describe Sandra's clothing, which included a pink Hello Kitty shirt, black leggings, and Hannah Montana flip-flops. The police then went door to door, questioning neighbors and showing Sandra's picture to gather information. The search for Sandra was a large-scale operation that involved the FBI, cadaver dogs, helicopters, and a team of volunteers. The police showed Sandra's photos to everyone in the community, hoping to find any leads. However, their initial efforts yielded no results. Police are worried, as Sandra always followed safety rules when leaving with her family. They suspect someone familiar might have lured her. Initially, they suspect her father Daniel, who hadn't seen her in a long time, and was in a financial dispute with her mother Maria. However, he's eventually cleared. The police then focus on an unfamiliar ice cream vendor and Frank Waller, a rumored pedophile who allegedly kissed Sandra 2 years prior. Frank admits to being attracted to young girls, but is eventually eliminated. Authorities will continue to monitor him. As the search continues, the community supports Maria. During a vigil, a neighbor finds a disturbing handwritten note near a mailbox and shares it with the officers. A cryptic message was discovered, stating, "Cantu locked in stolen suitcase, thrown in water on Bachet Road and Whitehall Road. Witness." The note's spelling mistakes and suspicious appearance raised questions about its authenticity and the intentions of its writer. Investigators needed more information and decided to interview Melissa, Sandra's neighbor and a Sunday school teacher at her grandfather's church. Melissa explained that she had recently gone through a divorce and a breakup, and now lived with her grandparents and her 5-year-old daughter. Sandra and her sisters often visited Melissa's trailer to play with her daughter, which created a close bond between the two families. When Melissa was questioned, she admitted that she didn't notice anything unusual when she found the note, and she allowed the FBI to search her car. Inside the glove compartment, they found a note with scribbled words, suggesting someone tried to conceal the message. The note was sent for further analysis, and Melissa was released. Weeks passed without any sign of Sandra, but her case took a shocking turn when her body was found inside a black suitcase in an irrigation pond. The suitcase had floated to the surface after the pond was filled 2 weeks prior. Sandra's body was identified by the clothes she was wearing, and an autopsy revealed that she had many cuts and wounds. The suitcase was locked and had an extra cord securing it, indicating that the killer wanted to keep it closed for a longer time. The grim discovery left everyone in shock and horror. The farmer who found the suitcase, Jose Luis Franco, was rewarded $20,000 for alerting the authorities. The autopsy revealed that Sandra had been severely assaulted, with no signs of biological fluids, but indications of an unknown object being used. The cause of death was asphyxiation, and a high dose of alprazolam was found in her system, suggesting she had been drugged. The official cause of death was ruled as homicidal asphyxiation. Tragically, it was determined that Sandra had been murdered just hours after she was last seen on surveillance footage, sending shockwaves through the community. The investigation revealed that Sandra's killer was not a random abductor, but someone she knew. The police pieced together a profile of their potential suspect. A white male, aged between 25 and 40, with a history of sexual assault or possessing child abuse material. The investigation took a surprising turn when a neighbor reported seeing a dark purple, two-toned SUV near the irrigation pond on the day Sandra disappeared. The car's unusual color and unfamiliarity in the area raised suspicions, and the neighbor's description matched a woman named Melissa Huckabee. Surveillance cameras showed Melissa getting into her SUV near Sandra's house around 3:30 p.m. and then driving towards her own house. She was later seen near the pond around 5:30 p.m. This timeline placed Melissa in the area around the time Sandra went missing, making her a prime suspect. However, when the police approached Melissa, they found that she had attempted suicide by ingesting razor blades and was hospitalized. When questioned later, Melissa claimed she was unaware of what had transpired and had only brought a note to the attention of the authorities. She denied any involvement in Sandra's murder. The police investigated Melissa's alibi and found that her phone records were crucial evidence. Earlier, Melissa had reported a theft to the police, claiming that her suitcase was stolen from her driveway around 4 p.m. She even sent a text message to Maria, mentioning the stolen suitcase. This was significant because the suitcase found with Sandra's body matched the one Melissa reported stolen. Despite the evidence, the authorities wanted more information, so they wiretapped Melissa's phone and waited for her hospital release. When she was released, they were shocked to discover that she had called the Canto family. Melissa invited one of Sandra's siblings to her home, but when the police responded, they found no children, suggesting that Melissa might have been planning to lure another child to her house. A neighbor then came forward, revealing that Melissa had taken a 7-year-old girl to the park without permission, and she was found to have been drugged with benzodiazepines, the same drug found in Sandra's body. The police suspicion of Melissa grew, and they discovered a notebook in her trailer with handwriting matching the note she claimed to have found. They also found a cryptic note in her car and a drug prescribed to her that matched the one in Sandra's body. During a search of her grandparents' church, they found a rolling pin with blood that matched Sandra's DNA profile and a window blind missing a draw cord, which matched the cord used to secure the suitcase. This led to Melissa's arrest on suspicion of kidnapping and murder. Melissa Huckabee, a California woman, has been accused of killing 8-year-old Sandra Cantu and faces multiple charges, including sexual assault. Authorities do not expect to make any further arrests in the case. When questioned by investigators, Huckabee initially denied any involvement, but later claimed that Sandra's death was an accident. She said she was playing a game of hide-and-seek with Sandra and her own daughter, and Sandra agreed to hide in a suitcase. Huckabee claimed she forgot Sandra was inside and only remembered when she arrived at a church, finding Sandra's lifeless body. Huckabee eventually confessed to zipping Sandra into the suitcase and leaving her there until it was too late. She then dumped the suitcase containing Sandra's body into a nearby pond. Further investigation into Huckabee's personal life revealed a troubled past, including criminal activities, depression, and other mental health issues. She had a history of theft convictions and had filed for bankruptcy due to credit card debt and medical expenses. Huckabee's family members, including her father and ex-husband, described her as struggling with depression and having issues with her self-image. Despite this, they said she was not prone to violent behavior. Huckabee is currently under suicide watch and faces multiple charges related to Sandra's death. The trial of Melissa Huckabee began on April 14th. During the proceedings, she became emotional when the prosecution described her criminal actions. She closed her eyes and struggled to hold back tears. Prosecutor Thomas Testa presented evidence that Melissa had planned Sandra's murder. Surveillance footage showed that Sandra had intended to visit Melissa's house. The prosecutor alleged that Melissa took Sandra to a church, where she gave her juice laced with a powerful sedative. Once Sandra was unconscious, Melissa attacked and suffocated her to death. Initially, the prosecutor sought the death penalty against Melissa, as she had not yet pleaded guilty to the crimes. However, during the trial, Melissa made a sudden decision to plead guilty, taking full responsibility for her actions. Before accepting her plea, Judge Linda Luss questioned Melissa to ensure she had discussed the matter with her lawyers and was certain about giving up her right to a jury trial. Melissa confirmed that she was resolute in her decision. Prosecutor Thomas Testa raised concerns about Melissa Huckabee's mental state after Judge Luss finished questioning her. He cited her unusual behavior in prison, including a self-harm incident, which made him question her ability to make rational decisions. Although Melissa seemed coherent in court, Testa worried about her decision-making in the long run. Despite Judge Luss's reassurance, Testa asked Melissa if she understood the situation, likely fearing she might retract her guilty plea. Melissa's admission of guilt marked a significant turning point in the case, bringing some closure to the Cantu family and avoiding a lengthy trial. This crucial moment simplified the legal proceedings and provided the Cantu family with some comfort after Sandra's tragic death. It also paved the way for what would happen next in the case. On June 14, 2010, Melissa Huckabee was sentenced to life in prison without parole for the intentional and premeditated murder of Sandra Cantu. The prosecution alleged three special circumstances in this case. Firstly, it was alleged that Huckabee committed the murder while kidnapping Sandra Cantu, a violation of Penal Code Sections 207 and 209. Secondly, it was alleged that Huckabee committed the murder while engaged in another crime. Thirdly, it was alleged that Huckabee committed the murder during or immediately after attempting to commit rape by instrument, a violation of Penal Code Section 289, as defined in Penal Code Section 1.2. The prosecution has warned that any evidence presented at a preliminary hearing may also be used in future probation violation proceedings or discovery requests. Melissa Huckabee is accused of murdering Sandra Cantu and initially faced additional charges for drugging a 7-year-old girl, although these charges were later dropped as part of a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. Melissa has pleaded guilty to the first-degree murder and kidnapping of Sandra Cantu. Her heinous crime against a young girl in Tracy, California shocked the nation, and today the court will determine her punishment. This morning, there will be 2 hearings related to the Sandra Cantu murder case. The first hearing will focus on Melissa's sentencing, followed by a decision on whether to lift the gag order. Our correspondent, Latia Arra, is reporting live from outside the San Joaquin County Courthouse in Stockton, where it promises to be a very busy day. In just 3 hours, Melissa Huckabee will be formally sentenced for the murder and kidnapping of 8-year-old Sandra Cantu. The community and Sandra's family are eager for the proceedings to come to an end. Last month, Melissa pleaded guilty and will likely spend the rest of her life in prison without parole. As part of her plea deal, the rape charge against Melissa was dropped, sparing her from the death penalty. During her sentencing, Melissa expressed remorse and confusion over her actions, directly addressing Sandra's mother. She acknowledged that she couldn't understand her own motivations saying that she wished she could give an explanation for what had happened, and that she still couldn't understand why she had done what she had done. Melissa also apologized, saying that for the pain she had caused, saying sorry wasn't enough, but it was all she could do. She added that since the day Sandra had died, she had had to live with the consequences of her actions, and that for the rest of her life, she would have to live with the responsibility of Sandra's death. Sandra's father expressed his struggle to forgive Melissa, saying that they were supposed to forgive their enemies, but he didn't know what to make of her. He added that nothing that happened that day would change the fact that she had taken the life of an innocent little girl who hadn't even gotten to decide what ice cream to eat. The community was deeply affected by Sandra's tragic death. On April 16, 2019, over 600 people attended her funeral to pay their respects. To honor her memory, volunteers planted a tree and built a new playground at Jacobson Elementary School, and one of her cousins started an annual celebration called Tracy Celebrates Children, which helps local kids get fingerprinted and photographed in case they go missing. The prosecutors believed that Melissa deliberately planned and executed the tragic event, but she never shared her motives, leaving investigators baffled. Melissa's past struggles with depression, difficult history, and self-harm were revealed in documents, but they didn't provide a clear explanation for her actions. Melissa is now serving a life sentence in San Juan County Jail, a constant reminder that serious crimes have serious consequences. While the pain of losing Sandra will never fully heal, her family finds solace in knowing that justice has been served, and her death did not go unanswered. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Alejandra Lafuente. Alejandra Lafuente was a stunning brunette with captivating hair and bright brown eyes that accentuated her thick, dark eyelashes. She maintained her athletic physique through a dedicated fitness routine, which included yoga and breathing exercises. Taking care of herself was a top priority for Alejandra, and she frequently visited beauty salons, massage parlors, and spas to pamper herself. During warm weather, she could often be found lounging on the beach while still managing to get some scientific work done. On cloudy days, she would opt for tanning salons instead. It's clear that Alejandra had a deep affection for herself and believed she embodied the ideal of female attractiveness. Her career was also thriving, thanks in part to her father's influence. Alberto Dente, a renowned psychiatrist and doctor of sciences, was a leading expert in his field, with a focus on mental health conditions such as schizophrenia and manic disorders. His groundbreaking scientific work and experiments had earned him widespread recognition. Alejandra greatly admired her father and aspired to achieve similar success. She followed in his footsteps by enrolling in a prestigious university to study psychiatry, where she graduated with honors. Her strong work ethic, exceptional intelligence, and her father's influential connections enabled her to complete and defend her thesis on manic syndrome with distinction. However, Alejandra's career took an unexpected turn when she became more interested in working as a psychotherapist rather than pursuing a traditional path in psychiatry. With the financial support of her father, Alejandra obtained the necessary licensing and opened her own practice in a modern business center located in the heart of the capital. Her practice quickly gained popularity, attracting a diverse range of female clients who sought counseling for issues such as eating disorders, depression, relationship problems, and low self-esteem. Alejandra demonstrated a remarkable ability to help her clients resolve complex family issues. Despite her professional success, her personal life faced challenges. Her first marriage ultimately ended in divorce, but it was blessed with two beautiful daughters who inherited Alejandra's captivating eyes and her father's sharp sense of humor. Alejandra wasn't discouraged despite having two children. She still wanted to meet someone who could be a good partner and father to her daughters. After her separation, her ex-husband would visit on weekends to spend time with she and help with household chores. However, His last visit would be his final one. Alejandra asked him to enter through the backyard, claiming the front door lock was jammed. She then directed him to the bathroom, saying their youngest daughter was bathing. Unaware of the danger, he complied. The house was eerily silent, with no cartoons or children's laughter. Upon entering the bathroom, he noticed tape on the floor and an empty bathtub. At that moment, he realized something was wrong. Alejandra stood behind him, wielding a hammer. She delivered 2 forceful blows to his head, causing him to collapse with blood pouring from his skull. The experts later determined that the first blow was fatal, and he had no chance of saving himself. The eldest daughter returned home early from a friend's house and became an unintentional witness to a horrific scene. The children had often seen their parents arguing, and Alejandra, who was believed to have mental health issues, would frequently lash out at her friends and even physically attack her husband. Her friends and housemates had observed her outbursts and erratic behavior on multiple occasions. On this particular day, the situation escalated out of control. The daughter fled the house and called for help, prompting a neighbor to rush over and contact the police. Alejandra, a psychologist, was arrested and charged with murder. She spent a month in a cell awaiting her initial court hearing. During the trial, Alejandra maintained her innocence. Her lawyers argued that she had acted in self-defense, claiming that her ex-husband was excessively jealous and had fabricated stories about her bringing men into the house, which could harm the mental well-being of their daughters. According to their version of events, on the day of the crime, the ex-husband had shown up unexpectedly at Alejandra's house, entering through the back door in an attempt to catch her with another man. He then allegedly attacked Alejandra, who was in the bathroom trying to assemble a nightstand. She was forced to defend herself and delivered 2 blows to the back of her ex-husband's head. On June 14, 2012, the court delivered its verdict. Considering the evidence presented by her defense team and the fact that she had 2 young children, Alejandra was sentenced to 1 year and 4 months in prison. However, thanks to the efforts of her lawyers and her father's financial support, her prison term was commuted to a suspended sentence. A few months later, her team filed an appeal, requesting that the charges be dropped. The basis of the appeal was that Alejandra had acted in self-defense. Human rights activists rallied around her, calling for a jury trial and portraying her as a victim of domestic violence. The court reviewed her case and ultimately handed down an acquittal. After her release, Alejandra resumed her work as a psychological counselor. She cultivated an image as a victim of gender inequality who had fought for her rights and won. This newfound image boosted Alejandra's popularity among potential clients. She soon met Alan Carrera Cuellar, a wealthy Mexican businessman and the son of Adrian Carrera Francis. Alan was tall, handsome, and impressive. His father had previously headed the Special Services Department for the Central District and had achieved significant success in his career. Soon Alan expanded his business, creating a chain of construction stores that opened across the country. However, while part of his business was legitimate, another part was secretly linked to crime. This connection led to his father's removal from his position after one of Alan's financial frauds was exposed. Furthermore, Alan had a stake in a criminal group that transported psychotropic substances to the United States. Their base, located in a border town, was guarded by corrupt police officers and controlled a small portion of the psychoactive substance trade in the South. Alan's father was found to be involved in his son's activities, and after providing a statement to the police, he faced a 20-year prison sentence. Nevertheless, Adrian Carrera was released early on July 18, 2000, as part of the Witness Protection Program. Upon release, he dedicated himself to his son and legitimate business ventures. His son, Alan Carrera, quickly adopted his father's views and experiences. After graduating from college, Alan followed in his father's footsteps and became an entrepreneur, showing particular interest in a household appliance store that he successfully managed despite his young age. This business was smaller than his father's but generated a decent income. Alan was always surrounded by women, yet he had been in love with a classmate since childhood, whom he eventually married. She was intelligent, attractive, and came from a good family. The marriage, though brief, was vibrant and resulted in a beautiful daughter. However, Alan's frequent absence from home due to work led to the breakdown of their marriage, ultimately ending in divorce. Alan struggled to move on from his high school sweetheart. He found no joy in new books and was immersed himself by loneliness and sadness, which led him to develop a drinking problem. To overcome his prolonged depression and alcohol addiction, Alan tried various methods, including books, AA meetings, and therapy. Eventually, he met with Dr. Alberto, a renowned psychiatrist. Meanwhile, Alan's ex-wife, Maria, was also dealing with the aftermath of their difficult divorce. Her father was going through a similar experience. Despite their separation, Maria couldn't shake off her loneliness and still considered Alan the only man in her life. She decided to seek professional help and visited a therapist. However, the psychiatrist who had been helping Alan recover explained that due to ethical reasons, he couldn't counsel both spouses. He recommended that Maria seek guidance from a different therapist, Alejandra. However, it's notable that Alejandra's relationship with Maria wasn't transparent, as she didn't disclose that her father was involved. Alejandra soon realized Alan could be a suitable match. Alan was described as a pleasant and wealthy man in his prime. Without hesitation, Alejandra asked Maria to bring Alan in for another session. According to Alejandra, she could resolve their issues in a single session. During the session, Alejandra and her father put their plan to seduce the Alan into action. It didn't take long to get results. Immediately after the session, Alan asked Alejandra out for coffee to discuss family issues. Initially, she declined, citing medical ethics, but they went on a date that same evening. A romantic affair quickly developed between them. However, Maria soon discovered their relationship and was shocked. She considered reporting Alejandra to the medical ethics committee but decided against it. As a skilled therapist, Alejandra convinced Maria to let the situation go, attributing Maria's concerns to jealousy and an unwillingness to move on from her ex-husband. According to Alejandra, holding on to these feelings would prevent a happy future. Maria chose not to attend therapy sessions with Alan after they ended. Around the same time, Alan's relationship with Alejandra progressed quickly. Within a few months of meeting, they moved in together. 2 months later, they decided to get married, but Alan was unaware of Alejandra's past issues and the reasons for her previous divorce. In April 2014, Alan visited his parents and took the opportunity to discuss his upcoming wedding. His parents were surprised to learn about the wedding and his partner, Alejandra, as they had never heard of her before. The marriage was registered a week after Alan met with his parents. Notably, Alejandra asked Alan not to invite her friends and family to the wedding, citing a modest budget as the reason. However, her father did attend the ceremony. At first, their life seemed like a dream come true. They were young, happy, and had many plans and aspirations. However, this didn't last long. Alejandra's volatile temperament soon became apparent. The relationship between them began to deteriorate rapidly. Alan was a private person who kept his personal life to himself, even from friends. As a result, few people knew what was happening behind closed doors. However, it was clear that the relationship was strained, and they no longer appeared happy. After marrying Alejandra, Alan distanced himself from his family. When his parents weren't invited to the wedding, leading to a complete breakdown in communication. Alan's friends noticed that his wife was becoming increasingly anxious and short-tempered, often behaving inappropriately. After a few embarrassing incidents, Alan became ashamed and started to limit their social interactions. Their arguments became a daily occurrence, often with no apparent reason or justification. Alejandra discovered her husband Alan's infidelity by snooping through his phone one evening. The racy messages from other women were the final straw. She claimed that when she confronted him about his cheating, he became violent, insulting, and humiliating. Feeling that the marriage was beyond repair, Alejandra decided to take drastic action. Instead of seeking therapy or counseling, she turned to a more sinister solution. Her focus shifted to devising the perfect plan to murder Alan. Alan, oblivious to his wife's intentions, continued his daily routine. He remained distant from his family, only making an effort to attend the annual family gathering to celebrate his grandfather's birthday. Alan attended the feast, but his parents made it clear that his wife, Alejandra, was not a welcome guest in their home. This snub infuriated Alejandra and further strained the relationship. Little did they know, this would be the last time the family saw Alan alive. On October 31, 2014, Alan sent a text message to his family, saying he had arrived home safely after his birthday party. However, he hasn't been in touch since then, and his absence from work for several days was unusual, as he was always responsible and diligent about his job. With the launch of a new business venture approaching, Alan's presence was crucial. But Alejandra had a sinister plan, which she set in motion after Alan returned from his birthday celebration. The couple had another argument, and Alejandra decided to eliminate her husband. Alejandra spiked his milk with a powerful sleeping pill, which Alan typically drank before bed, and then smothered him with a pillow. Alejandra took pleasure in watching her husband struggle to regain consciousness, pathetically trying to remove the pillow and take a breath. The most challenging part, however, was disposing of the body, a task she hadn't had time to plan for. Alejandra was in a desperate situation, as her husband Alan was too heavy for her to move on her own. With time running out, she rushed to her neighbor's vegetable garden to borrow an electric saw. She used the saw to cut Alan's body into pieces. This behavior seemed like something only a true sadist could accomplish. After dismembering the body, Alejandra packed the parts into garbage bags, taking the precaution of cutting off fingers and pulling teeth to hinder identification if the body was discovered. She stuffed the bags into suitcases to make it easier to remove the remains from the house without arousing suspicion. However, her plan was foiled as dawn approached. Alejandra struggled to leave the house with the heavy suitcases unnoticed. An elderly neighbor, who was awake due to insomnia, watched from her window and grew concerned about Alejandra's early and suspicious departure. It seemed strange that her husband wasn't helping her with the heavy luggage, and Alejandra's constant glancing around only added to the neighbor's unease. At dawn, Alejandra returned home, surprising her vigilant neighbor even more than before. It was later discovered that she had dispersed bags containing her ex-husband's remains across different neighborhoods to conceal her actions. As a new day began, she resumed her daily routine. On November 6, 2014, Mexican police made a gruesome discovery, a human torso with no teeth and no fingers. The entire police force was alerted due to the extreme brutality of the incident. Within a day, additional body parts were found in various locations throughout the city. Notably, the distance between the locations where the body parts were found was substantial. This would later be linked to Alejandra's prolonged absence from home. All the discovered body parts were sent to a leading forensic laboratory, where experts promptly confirmed that they belonged to the same individual. To avoid raising suspicions, Alejandra sent messages to Alan's relatives, claiming they were going on vacation and would be unreachable. Unbeknownst to her, Alan had recently distanced himself from his family and wasn't in contact with them. However, Alejandra's plan was foiled when her father, Alberto, called Alan's father's house to inquire about Alejandra's whereabouts. Alberto was concerned because he hadn't heard from her in a while, and her patients were worried about missing their counseling sessions. Later, Alberto called Alan's relatives again, informing them that Alejandra had been found and forcibly admitted to a clinic due to depression caused by her husband's infidelity. This alarming news prompted Alan's relatives to try and locate him, but they were unsuccessful. As a result, Alan's family sought police assistance. Forensic experts compared the remains of a recently discovered corpse with Alan's characteristics and confirmed a 100% match. Alan's relatives also identified the body, which was especially distressing for his grandfather. Shortly after the identification, his grandfather fell ill with heart disease and lost. The investigation led to a search warrant for Alan's home and office, where a patch of freshly dug earth was found in the backyard. Upon further digging, fingers and teeth were discovered. Alejandra was immediately apprehended, and traces of blood were found in one of the rooms, on the car trunk, and in the garage. Initially, Alejandra denied her guilt, hoping to escape punishment as she had with her previous husband's case. However, the investigation quickly resolved the case, aided by the testimony of an elderly witness whose account matched Alan's estimated time of death. Alejandra had used her position to obtain a powerful sleeping pill, a medication only accessible to doctors. This new evidence further implicated her in the case, establishing a link between Alejandra and the brutal murder of her husband. CCTV cameras played a crucial role in tracing Alan's movements, confirming that he entered the house but never left. The footage also showed that suitcases were removed from the house. On December 10, 2014, the jury delivered its verdict, sentencing Alejandra to life imprisonment for murder with brutality, attempted concealment of the crime, and abuse of her official position. Despite her father's efforts to use his connections and bribes to spare Alejandra from imprisonment, he was ultimately unsuccessful. However, he did manage to have the trial closed to the public and press, thereby minimizing further publicity. However, his actions were ultimately driven by self-interest and a desire to advance his career. As a result, his reputation as a specialist has been severely damaged, and it is unlikely that anyone will seek his expertise again. This is largely due to his failure to recognize the problems with his own daughter and the fact that he raised her to be a ruthless and calculating individual. The trial also brought to light the case of Alejandra's first husband, whose death had occurred under suspicious circumstances. Although the passage of time had made it difficult to gather evidence, there were suspicions that Alejandra's father may have been involved in the incident. Some even speculated that he had colluded with his daughter and that their actions had been motivated by a twisted scientific interest. Despite these suspicions, no concrete evidence was found to support this theory. Following numerous appeals from the victims' families, the sentence was ultimately increased to death. This was a highly unusual outcome, as such sentenced are extremely rare in Mexico, particularly in modern times. Alejandra has been denied the opportunity to appeal the case, and her property, including their house, will be transferred to Alan's family. However, this offers little comfort, as the loss of a loved one can never be fully compensated. It has become clear that Alejandra was a pragmatic and cruel individual with significant mental health issues, despite medical examinations initially suggesting that she was sane. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Dalia DiPolito. On a sunny afternoon in Bon Beach, Florida, a man named Muhammad visited the local police department with a shocking story. He claimed that a woman, whom he knew only as Delilah, had approached him with an unusual and disturbing request. Muhammad alleged that Delilah had offered to hire him to commit a murder. While his story seemed plausible, Muhammad failed to provide one crucial detail: Delilah's last name. Despite this limitation, the Bon Beach Police Department took Muhammad's claim seriously and launched an investigation. The detectives were tasked with identifying the mysterious Delilah and determining who her husband was. To gather more information, they decided to use Muhammad as bait to set up a meeting with Delilah. They chose a local mobile gas station as the meeting location, given Muhammad's statement that Delilah lived nearby. At the designated meeting spot, the police set up several surveillance vehicles to monitor the encounter, hoping to gather evidence and piece together the puzzle surrounding Delilah's identity and motives. Before the woman arrived, the detectives briefed Muhammad on what to say to her. They secretly fitted him with a wire and recorder, allowing them to listen in on their conversation as it happened. As they continued to monitor the mobile gas station, the detectives focused on the interaction between Muhammad and a woman named Delilah. What surprised them was Delilah's appearance, which didn't fit the typical profile of someone who would want her husband killed. Delilah, an attractive woman wearing a skirt and tank top, got into the car with Muhammad. Muhammad, pretending to be hesitant, asked if it was worth having someone killed. Delilah replied that she couldn't divorce her husband because she feared he would retaliate if she tried to leave him and divide their assets. The woman told Muhammad that after her husband's murder, she intended to create an alibi by going to a different location, such as Boca Raton. Muhammad then asked her if anyone would suspect her of involvement in her husband's death, and she confidently replied that no one would accuse her. The detectives were stunned by the woman's casual tone as she discussed hiring a hitman to kill her husband. As they continued to listen, they were horrified by the woman's nonchalant attitude, which made it seem like she was discussing a routine business deal rather than arranging for someone's murder. At one point, she even showed Muhammad photos of her husband, which further revealed her callous disregard for human life. During the conversation, the woman made a stunning admission to Muhammad, revealing that she planned to pay a hitman to kill her husband. This confession was a crucial breakthrough for the detective, as it confirmed the woman's involvement in soliciting a murder. However, the detective knew that to build a stronger case, they needed to gather more evidence. The woman told Muhammad that she would withdraw $1,000 in cash and hand it over to the hitman later. After discussing the plan with Muhammad, the woman left the mobile gas station and drove home. The detectives followed her to gather information about her address. A records check revealed that the address belonged to Dahlia Doe, not Delilah as they had initially thought. With this new information, the detectives ran a background check on the vehicle Dahlia used to meet Muhammad at the gas station. This allowed them to obtain the registered owner's name, which was her husband, Mike Doe. To their friends, Mike and Dahlia seemed like a loving and happy couple. The two had met when Mike was browsing the internet at work, looking for something to do when he was feeling bored. Mike found a website that offered escort services and decided to hire one. This decision would have a profound impact on his life. When the escort arrived, Mike was immediately drawn to her physical attractiveness. He thought she was exceptionally beautiful, and he felt an undeniable attraction between them. As they spent more time together, they quickly developed a strong connection, effortlessly engaging in friendly conversations over the next few days. Mike and Dahlia's friendship blossomed into a romantic relationship after they spent a weekend together. They quickly realized their feelings for each other went beyond friendship. As a result, they became a committed couple. A few months into their relationship, they stumbled upon an engagement ring store, which led to a conversation about marriage, a topic they had previously discussed. Mike was drawn to the idea of spending his life with Dahlia and decided to purchase a ring, symbolizing his commitment to their future together. Despite their relationship moving quickly, Mike was deeply happy and in love. Before meeting Dahlia, Mike had a troubled past. In 2001, he was sentenced to 2 years in prison in Broward County, Florida, for grand theft, fraud, and false telephone sales. At the time, Mike was struggling with drug addiction and desperation for money, which he later acknowledged was no excuse for his mistakes. Mike served his 2-year sentence and was given 28 years of probation. The court granted Mike a lengthy probation period to give him time to pay back the significant amount of money he owed. However, when Mike returned home, he was unsure of how he would repay the debt. Determined to settle his debt, Mike found a job as a cook at a local restaurant, earning $350 weekly, which was insufficient to make a notable dent in the substantial amount he owed. To improve his financial situation and secure an early release from probation, Mike sought a better-paying job. A friend offered him an office job near his home, allowing him to transition from cooking to email marketing. As Mike and Dahlia started dating, he eventually confided in her about his probation and the limitations it imposed. Mike explained that he required permission to leave the state while on probation. Dahlia, who had a strong desire to travel, expressed her wish to explore the world with Mike. To help Mike become debt-free, Dahlia offered to provide $91,000 if he paid the remaining balance, enabling them to clear the debt and start the life Dahlia had envisioned. Dahlia, a successful real estate agent, was financially stable and able to help her partner Mike pay off his debt and clear his name. Mike consulted his attorney to understand the process, and the attorney advised him to gather the necessary funds to be released from probation. To facilitate the payment, Dahlia and Mike agreed that she would send the money from her Bank of America account to the attorney. Dahlia informed Mike that she had transferred the funds, but when Mike followed up with the attorney, he was told that the payment had not been received. Mike waited a day and then asked Dahlia about the status of the transfer. However, Dahlia insisted that she had sent the money, leaving Mike frustrated and unsure about what was happening. Mike's concern grew, so he contacted his attorney again, only to be told that they still hadn't received anything. Dahlia claimed to have sent the money to the attorney, but couldn't explain the delay. 2 days had passed since the transaction, but the attorney remained without the funds. Mike asked Dahlia for proof of the transaction, needing the receipt to verify the details. However, Dahlia suspected foul play, suggesting the attorney might have stolen the money. She vowed to find the missing sum, while Mike sought to move past the misunderstanding. Meanwhile, a supervisor at the Bon Beach Police Department reached out to Sergeant Whitey Jean for assistance. Sergeant Jean met with a detective working on Dahlia Deo's case. The detective briefed Sergeant Whitey Jean on the case, revealing that Dahlia wanted to hire someone to kill her husband. The detective explained that Dahlia was waiting for a call from the would-be hitman and asked Sergeant Whitey Jean to pretend to be the hitman and arrange a meeting with her. Sergeant Whitey Jean agreed to help with the investigation and took on the role of the hitman. As the hitman, he contacted Dahlia and demanded a $3,000 advance and the key to her house. The detective had requested the key as part of their plan to make Dahlia believe the murder would happen at her home. However, Dahlia was unhappy about the payment demand and called Muhammad, the informant, to express her concerns. During the call, the detective overheard Dahlia's fears and worried that they might have scared her off. They feared that Dahlia might change her mind and find someone else to commit the crime. On August 3, 2009, Dahlia met with Sergeant Whitey Jean, who was posing as a hitman, in a CVS parking lot. However, Dahlia didn't bring the agreed-upon payment, which led Sergeant Whitey Jean to warn her that if he had to wait until after the murder to get paid, she would need to give him $7,000 in cash up front. Sergeant Whitey Jean explained to Dahlia that he would plan the staged break-in and murder of her husband Mike on Wednesday morning, taking advantage of the recent robberies in the area. He outlined his plan to make it look like a legitimate break-in, shooting Mike twice in the head to make it appear like a robbery gone wrong. Sergeant Whitey Jean also told Dahlia that he would contact her a few days after the murder, as he knew the police would be closely monitoring her activities in the aftermath of the crime. Sergeant Whitey Jean cautioned Dahlia that the delay was essential to avoid raising suspicions and maintaining the operation's secrecy. During their conversation, he gave her multiple opportunities to withdraw from the murder-for-hire plot. However, Dahlia expressed her unwavering commitment, stating she was 5,000% certain about her decision to have her husband killed. Dahlia provided Sergeant Whitey Jean with crucial details, revealing that her husband, Mike, followed a predictable morning routine, walking the dog at a specific time and leaving the house unlocked. This information was vital to the success of the plan. She also told the sergeant that she would create an alibi by going to the gym during the murder, ensuring her absence from the house when the crime would take place. The sergeant instructed Dahlia to arrive at the gym by 6 a.m. and informed her that he would enter her home at 6:30 a.m. After speaking with Dahlia, Sergeant Whitey Jean was taken aback by her extraordinary cruelty, having encountered few individuals in his line of work who exhibited a similar level of ruthlessness. The detective wanted to create a fake crime scene at Dahlia and Mike's home to see how Dahlia would react on the day of the alleged hit. To do this, they needed to know Dahlia's whereabouts. At 5:30 a.m., Dahlia told Mike she was going to the gym, which Mike found unusual since she had never gone that early before. However, he didn't think much of it and continued with his morning routine. The detective kept an eye on Dahlia to make sure she went to the gym and went inside. This confirmed that the plan could move forward. But before setting up the fake crime scene, the detective needed to fill Mike Dio in on what was happening. About 30 minutes after Dahlia left for the gym, loud banging noises were heard at Mike and Dahlia's house, prompting Mike to rush to the door. When he opened it, he was surprised to find several police officers standing there. Confused and worried, Mike asked them what was going on. The detective informed Mike that his wife, Dahlia, had tried to hire a hitman to kill him, but the hitman was actually an undercover cop. The entire situation was a setup to look like a murder-for-hire plot. Mike was in shock when the police told him that his wife had hired someone to kill him. The detectives took him to the police station, leaving his home to be staged as a crime scene with fake police tape and lights. The detectives then called Dahlia, telling her that they needed to question her about an incident involving her husband. When she arrived home, she found her house surrounded by police cars and crime scene tape. The detective told her that her husband had been murdered, and she broke down in tears. However, the detective noticed that Dahlia's reaction seemed unusual, as she didn't produce any tears. The detective began questioning Dahlia about suspects, trying to get her to confess to hiring the hitman. Dahlia claimed that her marriage was fine and that Mike's problems with probation and a stock fraud conviction might have led to his murder. Unbeknownst to her, Mike was watching from another room. The detective then revealed that they knew the truth behind the murder and brought in Sergeant Whitey Jean, who Dahlia claimed she didn't know. The detective arrested Dahlia for solicitation of murder, revealing that the hitman was an undercover cop. Mike was given the chance to confront Dahlia, but she refused to admit her guilt. Dahlia's trial took place on April 26, 2011, where Mike testified against her for 3 days. Her defense argued that the entire plot was a publicity stunt for a reality TV show, but Mike denied any involvement. Mike denied any interest in reality TV shows and claimed he had no involvement in Dahlia's alleged plot to kill him. He also stated he had no knowledge of public relations. After the trial, the jury found Dahlia guilty of solicitation to commit first-degree murder with a firearm, and she was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Mike was relieved by the verdict, but also felt a sense of closure, knowing justice had been served. However, Dahlia's attorneys appealed the conviction, citing a juror's remark about Dahlia poisoning Mike's Starbucks drink, which was not presented as evidence during the trial. The appellate court reversed the conviction, and a second trial was held. Despite the state's confidence in their case, the jury reached a hung verdict, resulting in a mistrial. A third trial was held, and Dahlia was again found guilty, this time receiving a 16-year prison sentence. Dahlia's defense team continued to appeal her conviction, but the Florida Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court declined to review her case. Her attorneys planned to file a motion with a federal judge to review the third trial for constitutional violations. which would be their last chance to secure a new trial. Despite her conviction, Dalia has become a respected figure in prison, leading a Bible study group and earning praise from fellow inmates. She is separated from her young son, who lives with his grandmother, and deeply misses being with him. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Corey Richens. Eric Richens was born on May 13, 1982, and left a lasting impact on those around him. As a child, Eric was passionate about sports, actively participating in basketball, baseball, and soccer, which showcased his athletic talent and enthusiasm for staying active. Eric's true passion, however, was anything that involved being outdoors. He was an exceptional hunter, known for his impressive marksmanship, and had amassed an impressive collection of trophy animals from around the world. With his vibrant personality, Eric had the ability to light up any room he entered, spreading joy and laughter through his storytelling, playful pranks, and contagious laughter. As an adventure seeker, Eric lived life to the fullest in Utah, where he owned a wide range of motorized vehicles, including trucks, four-wheelers, and snowmobiles. He loved exploring the outdoors and relishing the thrill of adventure. Despite his love for fun and adventure, Eric was deeply committed to his faith, being a devoted member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Eric's family supported him on a 2-year mission trip to Mexico City, where he became fluent in Spanish. After high school, he attended the University of Utah, earning a degree in international studies with a minor in Spanish in 2009. While working in construction, Eric frequently visited Home Depot, where he met Corey Darden. Over time, they developed a friendly connection, and Eric found himself attracted to her charming personality and beauty. However, he was too shy to approach her directly, so Eric asked a friend to help him get her phone number. One day, while Eric was shopping at Home Depot, his friend discreetly asked Corey for her number, telling her that Eric was interested in getting to know her better. Eric anxiously waited to see if his plan would work. Eric took the next step and called Corey to set up their first in-person meeting, unaware that it would be a life-changing event. As soon as they met, they clicked, and their first date marked the start of a romantic journey. As they introduced each other to their families, their bond grew stronger. Corey's family welcomed Eric with open arms, and Eric's family was equally impressed by Corey's character and how well she fit with him. Although Eric's sisters, Katie and Amy, were initially cautious, they soon warmed up to Corey and accepted her into their family. In 2013, Eric and Corey got married in an intimate ceremony, making their relationship official. After their wedding, Corey gave birth to their first child, Carter, followed by Ashton and then Weston, completing their ideal family. Eric naturally took to being a father, and his boys looked up to him. Eric took great pride in his sons' accomplishments, whether they excelled academically, athletically, or artistically. He consistently showed his support by attending their events and celebrating their successes. Later, Eric established a successful stone masonry business, which flourished due to his exceptional craftsmanship and attention to detail. Clients sought him out for his expertise in creating beautiful stonework. The business provided Eric and his family with financial security. Additionally, Corey, who worked in real estate, contributed to the family's income. Her entrepreneurial spirit, coupled with her knowledge of the local market, made her a valuable asset. She would buy homes, renovate them, and sell them for a profit. The Richens family enjoyed a wealthy lifestyle, symbolizing the epitome of success. However, their seemingly perfect life came to a sudden end on March 4, 2020, when Corey called 911 to report that her husband Eric was unresponsive. When paramedics arrived, they determined that Eric had already passed away. Devastated, Corey called her mother Lisa, who rushed to be by her side. Corey's brothers, DJ and Ronnie, were present too, overcome with tears and shock. The three of them struggled to come to terms with Eric's passing. Corey recounted that the evening had begun on a happy note, as they celebrated her latest real estate business milestone. the purchase of a luxurious mansion. Before retiring to bed, Curie had even prepared Eric's favorite drink, a Moscow Mule, mixing ginger beer with vodka. Curie went to bed around 9 p.m., but ended up sleeping in her 9-year-old son's room because he was having nightmares. Later, around 3 a.m., she returned to the bedroom she shared with Eric. When she touched him, she was alarmed to find him ice-cold and unresponsive. Despite trying to wake him, she couldn't rouse him and knew something was seriously wrong. As she waited for the paramedics to arrive, Curie remembered the dispatcher's instructions to perform CPR on Eric, which she claimed to have followed. The paramedics were baffled by Eric's cause of death, speculating that it might have been an aneurysm, given his apparent good health and lack of known medical conditions. However, further investigation revealed that Eric had complained to Curie about chest pains the night before his death, which initially reinforced the aneurysm theory. But the autopsy results were shocking. Eric's cause of death was ultimately determined to be a lethal dose of fentanyl. Fentanyl is a highly potent pain medication that can be extremely dangerous and even deadly when taken in excessive amounts. After Eric's death, a critical question remained: how did this substance end up in his system? From the start, Curie and her family quickly blamed Eric's recreational drug use as the reason fentanyl was present. Curie explained that Eric would take a THC-infused gummy every night to relax, as he preferred THC, the psychoactive ingredient in cannabis, to unwind. However, Curie, her mother, and brothers had concerns about the origin of these gummies, suspecting that Eric didn't always buy them from trustworthy sources, and instead purchased them illegally. Eric's family strongly disagreed with these claims, believing there was more to the story, and urged investigators to explore other possibilities. Despite trying to move on, Curie faced significant challenges, according to her brother Ronnie, as the absence of their husband and father left a huge gap in their lives, leading their 3 sons to act out due to the uncertainty surrounding his death. Curie, grieving and seeking comfort for her children, turned to a creative outlet to cope with her emotions. She wrote and self-published a children's book on Amazon titled Are You With Me?, which aimed to help kids understand and deal with the loss of a loved one. The book tells the story of a young boy struggling to come to terms with his father's death through illustrations and narrative. In the book, Curie portrayed Eric, her late husband, as a protective angel always watching over their son. Her mother, Lisa, praised the book, saying it brought some comfort to Curie and her grandchildren as they navigated their emotions and rebuilt their lives. However, detectives investigating Eric's death soon uncovered evidence suggesting foul play. Just weeks after Curie appeared on local Utah news stations promoting her book and sharing her grief, she was arrested and charged with her husband's murder on May 8, 2023. The community was stunned by the arrest, and the tragic turn of events transformed what was initially a heartwarming story of a grieving wife and mother into an unbelievable tale of betrayal and tragedy. Curie is accused of murdering Eric by poisoning him. Eric's family believes Curie deliberately put a lethal dose of fentanyl in the Moscow Mule she made for him on the night he died. However, Curie's lawyer claims that no fentanyl was found in the glasses at their home. Curie denies any involvement in Eric's death, saying she had no reason to harm him. Her mother, Lisa, was shocked to hear about her daughter's alleged involvement and told investigators that the couple was happy and had no reason to kill each other. But as detectives dug deeper, they found that Curie and Eric's relationship was not as perfect as they seemed. The couple had disagreements, and Curie, who had given up her career to be a stay-at-home mom, wanted to be independent. She was also growing increasingly frustrated with Eric's frequent hunting trips. According to Lisa, Eric was unfaithful in his marriage, and he confided in her about the affair along with Curie. To address their marital issues, Eric and Curie sought counseling. However, Eric's family denies that he ever cheated on her. Eric genuinely loved his sons and wanted to save the marriage. Despite his efforts, Eric was preparing for a potential divorce. He set up a secret trust with his sister Katie without revealing his intentions. The investigation uncovered that Eric had 6 life insurance policies worth $3 million. Furthermore, Curry forged Eric's signature on an additional $100,000 policy just 2 months before his death. It was also discovered that Curry allegedly stole money from Eric's personal accounts and misused business funds over several years. Contrary to her claims, Curry's house-flipping business was failing, according to Eric's family representative. Curry's company was deeply in debt, with millions of dollars owed. According to the spokesperson, Curry urgently needed cash, and a prenuptial agreement signed before the marriage stated that she would not inherit the business assets if they were to divorce. However, if Eric were to pass away before her during their marriage, the assets would transfer to Curry. The spokesperson's claims were disputed by Curry's attorney, who maintained that the business was not in financial trouble. The attorney explained that the debt was a normal part of the house-flipping business, as it relied on lines of credit that would be repaid once the properties were sold. Curry's attorney clarified that the large debt figure mentioned was simply a result of regular business transactions. Curry's mother, Lisa, recalled that Eric had been supportive of Curry's business ventures, particularly when they bought the mansion where they were celebrating on the night of his death. In Heber Valley, Utah, a 10-acre estate with a mansion sat vacant since its construction in 2017, despite being close to popular ski resorts and Deer Creek Reservoir. This prime location offered endless opportunities for outdoor recreation. Curry, with the help of investors, bought the mansion with plans to renovate and transform it into a recreational hub. Her goal was to sell the property at a significant profit. After consulting an accountant, Curry and Eric discovered that they could potentially make a $12 million profit from the sale of the property, a substantial return on the initial $3 million investment. However, there's a discrepancy in Eric's involvement. While he seemed to be on board with the purchase, his family claims he was against it and had a heated argument with Curry about buying the mansion. Eric's family spokesperson claims that Curry gave Eric a drink containing fentanyl on the night of his death, and they believe this was not Curry's first attempt to harm Eric. They allege that in 2019, during a trip to Greece, Eric became violently ill after Curry gave him a drink, but Curry's brother Ronnie denies this, saying Eric was mistakenly given an alcoholic drink by a bartender while taking antibiotics. Eric's family also claims that Curry tried to kill Eric again on Valentine's Day 2022, a month before his death, when she brought him a sandwich that caused him to break out in hives and struggle to breathe. After Eric's death, Curry's behavior was questioned, including an incident where she allegedly attacked her sister Amy when she tried to open a safe containing a large amount of cash. Curry claimed she was defending herself to retrieve important documents, but was charged with assault and pleaded no contest in June 2023. Curry appeared in court for a 4-hour bail hearing, during which her attorney tried to convince the judge to release her on bail. Prosecutors presented 3 witnesses and evidence to argue that Curry had poisoned her husband. One of the witnesses, a cell phone expert, testified about Google searches found on Curry's phone, including queries about retrieving deleted iPhone messages, FBI's ability to find deleted messages, and the lethal dose of fentanyl. However, Curry's attorney countered that these searches were conducted after her husband's death, as Curry sought answers to the accusations against her. The prosecution also questioned the lead detective about potential sources Curry might have used to obtain the drugs that killed Eric. According to the detective, a woman named Carmen Labba, who claimed to work as a cleaner for Curry's business and home, told investigators about a meeting that took place in early 2022. During a call, Curry asked Carmen to buy fentanyl pills for an investor with a back injury. Carmen, who had a history of drug-related crimes and was on probation, agreed to the request. She later told detectives that she purchased 15 to 30 fentanyl pills and met with Corey to exchange them for cash. This exchange happened on February 11, 2022, just 3 days before Valentine's Day. Around the same time, court documents suggest Corey tried to poison Eric with a sandwich. Carmen also told detectives that Corey contacted her again, looking for even stronger drugs. She said Corey paid her with a check this time. Specifically, Carmen claimed that Corey wrote her a check for $1,300 about a week after Eric's death. However, Corey's attorney questioned whether the check could have been payment for cleaning services instead, and the detective acknowledged that this was possible. Corey's lawyer tried to discredit Carmen by pointing out her criminal history, including 4 first-degree felonies, and suggesting that she might not be a trustworthy witness. The lawyer claimed that Carmen may have been coerced into saying she sold drugs to avoid a long prison sentence, as the detective allegedly told her she would face serious consequences if she didn't cooperate. The lawyer also asked if there was any physical evidence to prove Carmen had bought drugs. The detective admitted that they found no text messages showing Corey asking Carmen for drugs, and no witnesses came forward to confirm they had seen the exchange. At the bail hearing, Eric's sister spoke to the judge, expressing her family's distress over Eric's death, and their fear that if Corey was released on bail, he would cause them further pain. Eric's sister asked the judge to keep Corey in custody, and the judge accepted her request. Meanwhile, Corey's family was upset because Corey was not allowed to leave jail before her trial and would have to stay there. They believed that Corey's time in jail was affecting her mental and physical health. In 2023, something serious happened to Corey while she was taking medicine given to her by the jail officials. She had a seizure and was quickly taken to the hospital from the jail. While Corey was in jail, she claimed that the officials gave her the wrong medication, which caused her to experience adverse effects. Fortunately, she recovered after being treated at a hospital. During her hospital stay, jail officials found a handwritten, unsent letter in her cell. They filed it into court records, claiming it was a note from Corey to her mother. Prosecutors argued that this letter provided additional evidence of Corey's intentions and motivations. In November 2023, they requested a no-contact order to restrict Corey's access to her mother and brothers, mainly due to the letter. Prosecutors claimed that the letter was evidence of witness tampering. According to prosecutors, the letter instructed Corey's mother on how her brother Ronnie should testify in court. Specifically, Corey allegedly wanted Ronnie to claim that Eric had admitted to obtaining pain pills containing fentanyl from Mexico during his trip abroad. The letter also instructed Ronnie to obtain text messages from Eric discussing his drug use. Corey stressed the need to link Eric's Mexico activities to his alleged drug involvement. Despite this, she vehemently denied accusations that a letter was an attempt to tamper with witnesses, claiming it was a work of fiction she wrote as a fantasy story. The judge ruled in her favor, as the prosecution failed to prove witness tampering. Currently, Corey and Eric's family are fighting for custody of their 3 sons, who are living with one of Eric's relatives. Although Corey is in jail, she still gets to see her sons through twice-weekly video calls. While her family has not been allowed private visits with the children, they regularly attend their sports events and practices, which are open to the public. If convicted of poisoning her husband Eric with fentanyl, Corey faces a sentence of 25 years to life. Multiple civil lawsuits have been filed against Corey, all related to Eric's estate. A central issue in these cases is the custody of Eric's children. Eric's family thinks that Corey's family is motivated by a desire to control Eric's assets, as whoever gets custody of the children will also gain control of his money. Corey's trial is scheduled to start in 2025.